All right, Casey, today, and actually for quite a while, I've been flying a red-tailed hawk for the first time in a while. And when I pull that big girl out, everybody's eyeing the gear up. And first and foremost, they see those sexy little squirrel chaps that she's wearing.
Where'd those come from?
They came from mountainstateFalconrySupply.com. And you know the best part about it? I'm in North Carolina. I ordered from Heather on, let's say, Saturday. I think they were here like Monday or Tuesday. It was like incredible. Being able to get something quickly on the East Coast is important to me because I don't know about you. I am like super scatterbrained about my falconry supplies. And it's like I decide I need something, but really I needed it a week ago. So yeah, it's good just to have Heather here on the East Coast. So I highly encourage people to check her out at mountainstatefalconrysupply.com. All right, Casey.
Yeah, what's up?
Let's talk tight, okay?
I love talking tight. Let's do it.
You're using it. Harrison's using it. I'm using it. Everybody's using it. Everybody who's anyone's using it. When we want the best, we go for the tightest. And who's doing the tightest?
Richard Moats at midnightfalconry.com.
That's right.
Aaron, we're supposed to be doing a podcast right now. What are you reading?
Oh, sorry, dude. I'm just enamored by this book I'm checking out by Bob Glass.
I can see the beautiful pictures from here. That's all I care about.
I know you're a picture guy, but there's a lot of really good words in here too.
I don't like the words.
Well, I do, but it's A Journey with Red Tails by author Bob Glass. Are you familiar with him, Casey?
Yeah, I grew up with Bob since I got into falconry. Before I was even in falconry, I met Bob. The guy has been flying everything for a tremendous amount of time, has a lot of experience, especially with red tails. And he decided, screw it, I'm going to write a book. And it's a really good book, excellent quality. He put his heart and soul into the thing. I got one right here behind me. It's excellent. Go check him out at ajourneywithredtails.com.
So today, Casey, after my red tail jackhammered a squirrel out of the tree in front of 20 people, we also put the goshawk up. And this goshawk is just wowing everybody with its acrobatics, just spiraling around trees after squirrels, flying to and fro through the treetops with ease. And I think you know where this bird came from.
I'm sure I would. The only place that a bird should come from. NorthMountainGoshawks.com for your next hunting partner. Visit him on Facebook and his website and fill out the questionnaire and tell him the Sporting Chance sent you. Winner of the most viewed episode of the year, Sean O'Neill, episode 22. Sean has a tremendous amount of experience with sighthounds, terriers, and pretty much any dog in between. His episode covered everything from acting in the Ninja Turtles movies to chasing down coyotes with his dogs. Sean has come on board and would like to offer the opportunity to our listeners to purchase dogs that he breeds himself. They'll chase anything from hares to bears. Go check him out at Clover Creek Canines on Facebook.
All right, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of the Sporting Chance podcast. I'm Aaron Kincaid.
And I'm Casey Everett.
And we will be joined shortly by the one and only, my hero, Casey's hero, Teddy Moritz. Live and in person. So we, for the first time ever, recorded our first in-person episode in Teddy's dining room.
We sure did. We got the full tour of the home. We learned, I learned quite a bit about dachshunds. Interesting stuff that I did not know. One fact that I will share, because I don't think we touched on it too deeply in the show. Me and Aaron were, first of all, we were both sick. Were we not?
Yeah.
We were both coughing and sniffling the entire time. I got up maybe 10 times during the episode to blow my nose in the other room, not to ruin the audio. But she gave us a full tour of the house, and she's dachshund stuff, hunting stuff, gifts from people from Europe, from hunters, from authors. I mean, Teddy is world renowned. That's a fact. We know that. But to see all the cool stuff that she has, and the history that she has, and it was cool. And the most fascinating part of the entire trip, the thing that I took away, other than the cool, amazing stories, which we're not going to give away, but how can I say this without saying it? There were some morbid discoveries on one of her hunts.
Yes. So and you could really tell, like, she was taking the opportunity. She had a lot she wanted to say.
Yep. Yeah.
So we really just let her talk. That's what it was all about. Because Teddy is a treasure. For anyone who is not fortunate enough to have met her, I mean, listen to her words, take it in. You know, she's just an absolute wealth of knowledge. I don't even know how she does it. I mean, she has retained, it seems like she's retained everything that she's ever come across. And we wanted to give her the opportunity just to talk. So the episode is well over 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there could be some little audio issues here and there because, like I said, first time we've recorded in person, there were dogs barking outside. Casey and I were both kind of sick. Yeah. So we were trying to cough away from the mic, and, Teddy was just there riffing. So she wasn't necessarily worried about where the mic was, but listening back to it, I think the audio is pretty good, but there's going to be some little imperfections. So I hope you can deal with that and enjoy the episode for what it is. Yeah.
And what it is a piece of history that we'll hold on to forever. A lot of great stuff, especially for me and those that know Teddy and love Teddy. It was a great episode. And like you said, Aaron, it was almost like she was spilling her heart in a way, stuff that she needed to say, wanted to say. Incredible stories, man. Like, I heard some of those stories when I was a kid and then forgot them. And then when she started telling it again, I was like, oh, this story. Yes. Yeah. Jumping on the deer's back and stabbing it to death. Anyway, it's just amazing. Crazy stories. Like, this is a 5'0". I mean, she's probably taller than me. But she's, 5'0". And, just to hear these stories of the crazy stuff she's done, her husband helping her, like, usually it's the opposite, right? It's like the husband's a falconer and the wife is, like, giving him a hard time. And Teddy's the falconer, but her husband doesn't give her a hard time. He's like, she'll call him and he'll bring a machine or bring an employee, somebody to help do something. And she told some pretty crazy stories of close calls with the law, close calls with dogs, close calls with bears, close calls with people,
coyotes, you name it.
Everything. All the cool stuff that you want to hear about somebody that has spent from 67 until probably a couple hours ago in the field, from 1967 and until this afternoon, still after it, nonstop, keeps a diary of every day in the field. This is a woman that is about it. But the thing that I took away from this trip, which was really cool, and it's just a little stupid thing, but I've been running dachshunds for 20 years, right? I didn't even know this. She had a throw blanket on their bed, and it had a smooth hair, long hair, and a wire hair. And she explained to us, and it wasn't even anything special. I think it was just a gift to her, and she just put it on the bed. And then we were standing there looking at it, and she just started explaining to us that the original Teckle was the smooth hair. That was the original Badger dog, was a smooth hair dog.
Contrary to what people think now.
Right. It's crazy because when you hear Teckle, you think of what? A wire hair dachshund. Right. And it's like, no, that it's not. The true Teckle, well, they're all true Teckles, technically, they're technically teckles, but the smooth-haired teckle dachshund is a smooth hair. That was the original dog. And then they isolated genes to get the smooth hair and the wire hair. Some say that the wire hair has bird dog in it to get that coat. So that's something that may be a contentious subject for the teckle guys. They call themselves the teckle guys because they run wire hairs. But every hunting dachshund is a teckle.
Yeah, we're houndsmen, Casey. We also run teckles.
Right. Yeah, that's us.
We do it all. We do it all.
Yep. We got to protect our way of life of houndsmanship.
That's right. Our way of life that people don't understand.
All right. Just because our dogs are a fraction of the size of your dog, they're still a hound.
Because our dogs are cute.
Yeah. It doesn't mean we're not as cool as you.
We're much cooler, in fact.
Yeah. No, that's an inside joke for some slight beef we had with
I'm sure the listeners love the inside jokes. So everybody, please enjoy this episode. And you know what? By the time this airs, Casey, the hoodies will have dropped. So if they're not on the website at the time of this, when this episode drops, check out the website shortly thereafter, sportingchancepod.com. There will be the hoodies with the Teddy tribute on the back. So for those with a keen eye, you'll see the little image of Teddy. You see the dachshund, the goshawk, rabbit, all that stuff. Famous design, right? We sold a ton of those shirts.
Yeah, people love them. And that tribute to Teddy with her in the background silhouetted, that's taken from a real photo.
Right.
Minus the bird.
Yeah.
I took that photo laying on my stomach of her standing there with the dachshund. And I sent a bunch to the artist and he used that one. And then Aaron's like, well, why don't we just turn her arm out this way and put a bird on it? And it's a Harris hawk, of course, on her arm. But you can't tell, but that's what it is.
She got the biggest kick out of that, by the way.
Yeah.
Out of being on the shirt. Because when she first saw the shirt, she was like, oh, wow, that's cool. And I said, look at look in the background. And she goes, who is that? And I said, look. And she was like, it's me. Yeah. She was like, yeah, she was so excited about it.
Yeah. She always wears that little short brim Filson hat.
Yeah. The little Filson hat.
Yep. That's her trademark.
And those hoodies are going to be very limited.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Definitely snap one up while you can. It's got her famous motto on it. We're pretty proud of the design. So
very proud.
All right. Enjoy. Welcome to a very special Sporting Chance podcast. I'm Aaron Kincaid.
And I'm Casey Everett.
And we are sitting here live for the very first time in person in the dining room of the legendary Teddy Moritz. Thanks for having us, Teddy.
You're always welcome, Aaron.
Thank you.
What about me?
You're always welcome, Aaron.
Oh, thank you. And, lurking at the end of the table with no microphone is Harrison Dalby.
Yay!
And he's currently leafing through some photo albums that we got to check out today with how many years of hawking and dog history?
Dog history is lifetime. Falconry, I became interested in 1963. I got my first hawk in 1966. For those of you who are not born then.
All of us.
All of us.
That's awesome.
You had mentioned, and you've talked on other podcasts about your start in falconry, but you had said you got your first red tail in an unusual way.
I would say so. And it taught me a lesson. We lived at the end of a dead-end street, and there were woods all around. And since I had been reading about falconry since 63, and there was very little literature other than English books from England. There really wasn't anything in...
Which are no good.
Well, not always fitting. And the library had bird ID books, but nothing about falconry, and I couldn't find any falconers then. So the backyard of our property was a garden and woods. And one day, to our surprise, a young red-tailed hawk landed in the backyard, back by the garden. I suppose he was mousing or whatever. So my father and my brother, we kind of surrounded him and threw a coat over him. And I had my first hawk, like it was meant to be.
It certainly sounds like a heaven sent.
Well, he was heaven sent until he died of something when I took his weight down. He was too tame, very tame. And I took his weight down and handled him a great deal. My father built me a little mews for him.
Oh, nice.
Had family support completely. And then one morning he was dead. And that was a very difficult lesson in hawk care. I don't know what he had. If he had something, he was too low, perhaps, which is the reason we caught him. And even with handling him and everything and giving some things to eat, maybe I was too excited to take his weight down and he crashed. So that was...
And how long was it until you got another hawk?
I'll have to think about that.
We don't need precise, but was it like weeks, days, years?
Years.
Years, okay.
Years.
That would kill me, having to wait around for years after you had your first taste.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
but it was just it was new for her, so she just got it, spur of the moment, and then was like
had it taken away
like that, and then
it makes you think. And I think in that interim period, maybe the Beebe and Webster book came out.
Oh, okay.
And there was my guidance.
What's that? Is that Hawks and Falconry, or what is that one called? I have it. It's a 2-volume.
It's
North American hunting hawks.
Falconry
and hunting.
North American Falconry and hunting hawks.
Yes, that's like the Falconry Bible, they say.
It was then, because I didn't know anybody to ask about jesses, and the Almeries weren't even invented, I don't think.
Right.
You know, it was standard jesses, and where do I get bells? And
that would be a tricky one back then.
It was make your own.
Make your own bells. There might be like
make your own jesses and
use like cat bells or something.
Ice skate bells. You ever have bells on your ice?
I've heard of that.
All right. Well, I did.
You put them on your ice skates?
Yeah.
What? Just for fun?
Mm-hmm.
Just like okay.
Because we used to have winter back then, and we could skate on local ponds.
Right.
Not like a 80-degree day in Delaware in
November, which is unnecessary.
Yeah.
Covered with seed ticks.
So I finished high school in 1966 and went to West Virginia University. And along the way, I met a gentleman from a town near where I was raised and took up with my future husband, Carl. And I was in the forestry school, majoring in wildlife management. And one of the other young foresters lived north in Pennsylvania in an unknown location.
You're right.
And said he knew where there was a nest of red-tailed hawks.
Oh, that's fun.
Well, since my eventual husband was a forester and had climbing gear, the young red-tailed hawk became mine.
You've been putting Carl to work for a long time.
I think he's still working outside right now.
Literally.
Literally doing something out there.
He is the wind beneath my wings.
Oh, that's good.
We've been married for 50 years and never a hesitation. And he's always been helpful. And what I am is because of him.
Yeah.
It's important to have a supporting partner when you endeavor to do this kind of thing.
Absolutely. He might not be involved in the sport, but he can build any kind of kennel or mews immediately. It's a challenge to him, and he loves doing it.
Dogs barking outside.
I didn't shut that door totally.
Yeah, go ahead.
Me.
That's the soundtrack of our lives.
Yes.
Dogs barking.
Yes, and they have no excuse to be barking, so I may go throw something at them.
It may have something to do with my dog. Who knows?
So at that time, I was in college, and I had rented a basement apartment, and I kept this bird in my basement apartment. The landlord thought it was amazing, and his wife wished I'd go away. And the bird was very tame, nice big hen. And I kept her through graduation and flew her up on the golf course at the forestry center, the engineering school, everywhere. And we took her everywhere because Carl and I would go canoeing or camping, tent camping. And we had a bull terrier and the bird. And we took that bird everywhere we went. We even went to Hawk Mountain Sanctuary during migration.
With her?
With her, with this red-tailed hawk. And could she spot migrating hawks better than anybody with lights binoculars? All right. And
do you remember your first head of game? Did you catch anything with her?
She took a squirrel off the side of a tree. And then I specialized more in rabbits. I kind of liked the challenge. And
so nothing's changed.
Right.
Yeah. Did you have any issues with like aggression and stuff with that particular bird?
You can ask my brother to show you the scar on his head.
Okay.
I should have asked him when I met him.
Yes. He walked out to ask me something, and she came out of a tree and raked him.
Ooh.
And she became more aggressive. So she went to another falconer in New Jersey who was also trying to breed birds of prey.
Okay. And
kind of lost track of her. But I know she lived a long life in captivity. So she taught me a great deal.
Oh, yeah.
About where to put your hand and not put your hand and when and things like that. She was a good bird. And then I finished college and I came back to North Jersey, worked in Turtleback Zoo, which is a Essex County zoo, as a docent, giving talks and tours and what have you. And they had birds of prey, and the director at the time very kindly let me man their birds of prey that were not on display. And he let me fly them on creances. So if you ever get your hand on a crane hawk, that's an experience.
Never even heard of that.
Right. I think that's South American, and they're all leg and a little body. And he was an interesting challenge. And then a short-tailed hawk we had, and he was very good about coming on a creance. So I learned a lot about birds of prey. And then I was interviewed by New Jersey Division of Fish, Game, and Wildlife to work for their information and education office, writing articles and editing their New Jersey Outdoors magazine.
Oh, cool.
Yes. So I worked there for a number of years. They gave me a house to live out on the wildlife management area. So Carl built a flight cage.
Oh, nice.
And moved the red tail in there and flew around there. And then I decided to get my MRS, and we moved back up to West Caldwell, MRS.
Oh, married?
Mrs.
Oh, I was trying to.
Yeah, it's my
That's some
MRS.
degrees that I don't know about.
I was thinking it's a degree, but no.
Yeah. It is a degree.
It is.
Yeah.
It's the toughest degree.
Yeah.
So, you when did you transition over to Harris Hawks? Because you may not know this, but me and Casey, we like to have a lot of fun at Harris Hawkers' expense.
Go ahead. They laugh at my dachshunds. They laugh at me. They might as well laugh at my hawk.
I mean, they laugh at us too about all types of stuff, but
it's just an internal, like, little,
sure,
like, joking, friendly,
and I spent
jabbing at each other.
Yeah, what do they call it? Talking smack?
Yeah,
talking smack.
Talking smack.
Is that a bad word to say?
No,
okay.
not on this podcast.
For the bulk of my falconry, I was flying Harris Hawks, and
yes.
I think for what I think you and actually everyone at this table for the most part practices falconry the same way with dachshunds and focusing on rabbits. It's hard to beat a Harris Hawk that's honed in on the dachshunds.
For sure.
Especially in tight urban or suburban spots.
Which is North Jersey, right?
Yeah, North Jersey. So when did you transition over to Harris Hawks?
Somewhere in the, let's see, I graduated in 70. worked at the zoo and fishing game. Somewhere in the interim, I met Floyd Presley from Frostburg, Maryland, and Floyd wanted a terrier, a Jack Russell. So he invited me down to hawk with him and his son Marvin and some of the family members, and that's where I saw my first Harris's hawks working together and with people, and I was impressed. And Floyd was very generous with his time. He said, and he shared information. A nice host, and Marvin would hunt with us and some of the uncles. And I really liked the Harris, so I got a Harris from Floyd when he bred. And he had the terrier, and they formed a line of terriers that were small and good hunters.
Yeah, Sean O'Neill was telling us about those. He called them den terriers.
Right, we call them den drivers or den terriers. And they're just mixed breed small terriers. When I got my first dachshund, and I began hawking still with Floyd now and then. He liked the looks of the dachshunds and what they did as far as tracking, more so than the terriers. So he got a couple of dachshunds from me. Several years later, he also got divorced, and the wife got the dachshunds.
Oh, no.
But in the meantime, I had come to appreciate the Harris hawks and what they could do. So I've had them ever since. I got a bird from Floyd, and he was a dynamic tiercel. Unfortunately, after a few years, I lost him. I was hawking along a flooded river, and the Passaic River floods very, very wide because it's in an old swamp. And the bird disappeared after a woodcock, and I never saw him again. And I drove all around the places you could drive, but the flooding was incredible. One story about a Passaic River that floods wide. One year it did that, and it froze to where it was about 4 inches of ice. But when it freezes, then the water underneath goes down. And boy, did we have some rabbit chases. Run them out of the swamp and under the ice.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Under the ice?
Yeah, because there was no water anymore.
Yeah, you ever go into like a marsh and there's like a paper thin layer of
it doesn't
and
freeze.
You walk and it just
it doesn't freeze very
I get like miniature versions of that in some of my spots, but not like that where you could walk on it and
yeah, and the dogs were running around, and sometimes some parts of the ice was clear and the bird can see the rabbit under there.
I feel like that could end badly.
And he's pounding on it, and running after it, and then it disappears. And
I've never imagined something
would just
like that.
Smash into the ice and kill itself.
Die immediately. So were the dogs running under the ice?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Man, that's so cool.
And you didn't know where they were going to come out because it was frozen for many hundreds of feet.
Wow.
And it was exciting.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but my sponsor, Bob Pendergrass, who you know, of course, he said the first falconry bird that he ever got to hold, other than when he was young, he got a hold of a red tail and all that, was Floyd Presley. Let him hold a Harris hawk.
Oh, yes.
And, when you're just getting into falconry, that's a huge thrill.
Yes.
Now it would be a chore if somebody asked me to hold their Harris hawk.
Teddy, was that so? We talked about the red tail, and then we jumped to Floyd. Was that the first like real falconry that you were able to see?
Oh, yes.
So that was your first you were kind of learning how to deal with birds.
I was book learning,
and then you went on a hunt with Floyd, and you were able to see like real falconry with dogs, and then you were kind of like, wow, okay, this can be done.
Yes,
here.
Yes, and because of the cooperation between the Harris's hawk and the dogs, I never said, gee, I'd like a goshawk and all that craziness.
Right.
Okay. And because I was married and I had children and I needed everybody to cooperate so that at 2:00 I could go pick the kid up from school.
Right.
Okay. So, there were days, this is all before cell phones, people. So there was a lot to pay attention to and know that it's 2:00 and the child needs a ride home. And even if the bird won't come down.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, so I stayed with the Harrises. I fooled with the kestrel for a while, but killing small birds didn't. My father was a houndsman. I've said that before. He had foxhounds, coonhounds, beagles. And that atmosphere of a dog needs a nose to produce game and stay with game stuck with me. And I went to Jack Russell's for a while because I had a bull terrier and I liked what that dog could do with varmints in various places. I even took him to Florida pig hunting. And
how'd that go?
Very well.
Did you get in there and stab a pig with a knife or anything?
They wouldn't let me. They wanted to kill it alive, keep it alive.
Oh.
The interesting thing about that whole scenario is that when I worked for the zoo at one time, there was another zoo, a local zoo, and that man, a private zoo, would go to Florida and pick up aged or unwanted circus animals. And he asked me one time to go with him to Wauchula, Florida, to pick up a tiger.
That's cool.
So another keeper and I rode with him to Florida. The ranch where we stayed was a cattle ranch because they had been doing this exchange type of thing for years. So we worked out where we were staying on a horse ranch, cattle ranch. Coincidentally, the neighbor who lived at the orange grove next to the ranch, the young boy worked for this cattle rancher. And when that young boy found out that I was a falconer, he was all about it. He was so excited because, again, he hadn't met anyone. He wanted to be a falconer. So I invited him to come to New Jersey, and he did. He drove all the way up, and I was pregnant with my second child. So I threw him and the baby in the car, and we went up to Cornell to see the hawk barn, meet Jim Weaver, and see the peregrines. And I took him to the zoo to see the animals there, the birds there. And he went back and became a very good falconer in Florida. So it was full circle.
That's awesome. And
what's even more interesting is a falconer that I met subsequently over in Maryland, Ted Dameron. Ted Dameron's son wanted to go pig hunting in Florida, and I hooked him up with that young man because that young man's Orange Grove, they hunted pigs with the cur dogs and all that excitement. So that Ted Dameron's young son still goes to Florida every year to hunt with Danny, who is now a grandfather.
Oh, wow.
So I thought that
is cool.
Yes.
So where along the way did you meet friend of the show, Sean O'Neill?
Dear Sean. He lived not far from us, coincidentally. And I think I met him at a terrier trial because I was a Jack Russell judge for underground work, for den trials, and for confirmation. And I believe that's where we met and found out that, we lived nearby and he had a little Jack Russell. So we started hunting together with the small dogs. I had dachshunds by then, and he had the terrier, and we did a lot of digging. Sean's a very good hunter and a very intuitive hunter. He knows, he doesn't get excited. He just gets the job done. And as I said, I called him Superman because
it's like Casey.
Doesn't lose his mind at the beginning of the hunt.
Right. There is no nervous.
It all worked out. The bird did fine, but
yes,
she was irritating me, to say the least.
Sean's very steady. And at the time, I was also getting into lurchers, and so did Sean. And he went from there. He had a big pit bull at the time. And one story about Sean is he had a little sports car convertible. I think, Sean, forgive me, I don't remember the make. But his story is he had been to Long Island and he was driving home with the pit bull sleeping next to him, and something woke the pit bull up and it jumped up. Well, its collar was on the gear shift.
Oh, no.
And it sent the car into a spin. And he was going down the Long Island Expressway in circles.
Oh, my God.
Yes. He had a good time with the sidecar on his motorcycle, too. I remember that. Anyway, Sean really took to the earthwork and the lurchers.
He told me that he misses the earthwork.
Yes, out where he lives, there probably isn't much. But
Yeah.
he was very strong and a very good digger. And I have found in the meantime that he was always willing to take advice. And if I suggested digging over here, and he would do it, and we'd succeed. Whereas as I got involved more with the Jack Russell people, a number of them didn't want to listen to what I suggested.
They don't take advice.
Right. Some of them. Some of them.
So that was a couple. Well, you hinted at a story about Sean, but there's got to be more.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Does another one come to mind? And I'm not leading you in any particular direction. I just can't help but to wonder if there's another story or two about Sean that you feel about you and Sean hunting that you feel like you would.
You should talk to
would
Sean.
Be entertaining. We have talked to Sean.
Oh. One place we hunted, I believe his Patterdale was under a pile of boards and was working a possum. All right. And we were listening to it and thinking maybe it would draw the possum. And we were moving a little bit of stuff. And all of a sudden the security guard showed up. And he said, "Are you hunting?" And we said, "No, the dog's stuck under there and we're trying to get it out." And the guy said, "You sure you don't have a crossbow under your coat?" Me? No. When you hunt around industrial parks, you often run into security guards.
Did you have a crossbow?
No.
Not that day?
No. I had Sean,
That's all the crossbow you needed. He said something about,
Uh-oh.
what was it? I'm sure it was something about the police being called, and he was like laying in he was hiding, and you covered, being a sweet, sophisticated lady, and he was, a bushy-haired Irish man hiding in the briars while you dealt with the police. And that probably happened more than once, right?
Well, we ran into security guards every now and then. But he was steady. He was very dedicated to the sport and to his dogs, and he went on to do well. And I remember a ferret coming up through the roots of a old tree, and it bit Sean right between the thumb and the forefinger. And he didn't jerk his hand back. The rest of us would have been flailing and screaming. And that ferret had him caught around a root and stuff. And all he did was reach very gently in, and he choked the ferret off.
Just gently choked it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't shake
Makes
it or anything.
sense.
He just put pressure until it let go to get air. And then he pulled his hand out.
And then carried on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is exactly what you got to do out in the field. When things go wrong, you just deal with it and move on.
We used to go to terrier trials. Sean and Carl and I had a motorhome that he drove, and I would throw the kids and Sean in there. And he was very good with my children, and they were, pushy to him. But we went to a number of terrier trials. It was all good. And
what kind of terrier trials? Because
Jack Russell terrier trials, where they have go to ground, they have racing, and they have conformation. And I judged conformation, and I judged the go to ground. And then we'd go out hunting with a bunch of the Jack Russell women, and they got us onto wonderful farms with easy digging. and then we'd head home. Bless my husband.
So the primary quarry when you're digging is groundhogs.
Yes. Here in the Northeast where I live, the primary is groundhogs because the farmers appreciate them being gone, and the dogs and hawk eat the meat. As someone accused me, I'm a meat hunter. Well, yeah, I'm not going to kill something and just leave it.
Right.
All right. I bring it home and feed it to the animals.
Well, waste not, want not, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And nobody wants a groundhog. It's not like you could let it go.
Yeah. You had mentioned you touched on lurchers. So you've been to England
Twice, yes.
and you've met two characters that I'm particularly interested in England. David Hancock.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the uninitiated, what could you tell someone who knows very little to nothing about David Hancock and lurchers?
Family man. He ran a farm for ducks. He bred ducks for eating and selling the duck eggs. He had a small holding, as they call it, wife, and I think a son and a daughter. The daughter may have taken over his breeding. And he bred lurchers, kind of pushed in that direction by David Bryan Plummer, because lurchers were becoming popular. And David had room to breed lurchers. So he did, and they started selling them in England. Good working lurchers. Some people didn't like them, and some people did, just like any other.
Mm-hmm. So what were the makeup of the lurchers that he was producing? Because there can be, as we all know, any kind of combination. So what was he mostly making?
Greyhound, bearded collie, border collie, various combinations, 3/4, 1/4, 3/4 greyhound, half bearded, half border, 5/8 greyhound, bearded and border.
Mm-hmm. Which that's for lurchers are fairly common in the countryside in England. I take it, right?
I would imagine they still are.
So for us, this group here, we got interested in lurchers thanks to stories that you've told us about them and Sean. But out on the West Coast and out in the Great Plains, they have lurcher type of dogs that they run coyotes with, but there's not much here on the East Coast.
A lurcher, I suppose if you had a strict definition, a lurcher is a cross with a good greyhound and a working breed. Some people made German Shepherd lurchers, but the collie lurchers, they tend to be intelligent. A greyhound's a nice dog, but he isn't always as they say, biddable as putting collie blood in. Not that a border collie is not a good rabbit dog too. So you create a lurcher. I don't know that people are breeding lines of lurchers, because a lurcher, technically, and when you breed a greyhound and a Saluki or add a whippet, that's a long dog because it's all sighthound.
And so what is like a hot blood? Do you know that?
I think maybe that might be a pure greyhound. I'm not really sure. I don't.
I can't keep up with all that
vernacular.
Yeah.
Like Sean is breeding bull stags, whatever that is. Yeah, I mean, really, I don't know the crosses, but whatever he's doing right.
Yeah. I can't keep up with when you say bull, and then he says bull, what exactly it means, like American Pit Bull Terrier, Bull Terrier, because they would tell you it's something different.
Yeah.
That's what he would say. And I just always thought I just look at that type of dog and think pit bull type of dog.
Right.
It's just a wide jawed little, 40-pound short haired terrier thing.
Well, he has truck terriers, which are a combination of terrier breeds. And the guys like him out there when a coyote runs in a culvert. You need to move him out.
Right.
And
you need something tough that can get in there.
And Sean appreciates and will breed tough dogs. That he does very well.
Yeah, they need a harder dog than we do, in my opinion.
It's a whole different world. Different world. Nothing small out there. Everything will bite you back.
Yeah. Teddy, do you know anybody in the East Coast that runs coyotes with dogs? Is that like any kind of common thing out here or not really?
No, because they go right in the woods, and a coursing dog
can't keep up with them in the woods.
Yeah, it's not meant. They would try, I mean, mine back here would run rabbits and try to get through the woods after them, and squirrels. Fox, if you bolt a fox, he stays in the woods. And the ones I got from Hancock were in about the 50, 60 pound range. And they could really motor.
So before we get off, there were two things, but I don't want to get too far off because I want to ask you some more questions about Hancock. But while on Casey's question, you had to have either done it yourself or known someone or been with someone who has caught a coyote on the East Coast with a dog. No?
No, I caught a few.
Okay.
But I honestly don't know anyone. Lurchers were not popular. The Jack Russell people all got lurchers because it was the thing to have.
Mm-hmm.
It was, they liked a white one with a brown spot on its head because it looked like their Russell. But they didn't hunt them. No, they just had them.
Just pets.
Right.
Can you tell us some of the, you said you caught one or two?
Yes.
Or I'll preface the question, any coyote story that you can think of that were maybe memorable?
Catching them.
I guess catching them, or any stories that come to mind.
I went to Kentucky one time to dig groundhogs, and I took 2 lurchers with me. And, we were looking for groundhogs, and the people down there wanted to see my lurchers. And we did put up a coyote, and he made it to a very tall fence, and my dogs took his tail off. Ouch. And he made it over the fence, so.
Did they just pull the skin off the tail, or did they take the whole thing?
It was like when you pull a squirrel's tail. I don't
skin.
think the bone came. No.
I would have that hanging up somewhere here. And you might still. I don't know.
No.
The dogs probably ate it.
I think the woman where we were staying, she has it.
So anytime you did catch a coyote, it was probably just an odd circumstance,
yes,
right?
I wouldn't have mind running into them more places, but they weren't that common when I had the lurcher.
That's a good point.
They weren't. Now they're everywhere. And they're smart and they're tough. And it takes you'll see Sean's dogs are 60, 70, 80 pounds to kill a 35-pound animal. But believe me, a coyote is a terrible fighter. We went to southern Indiana one winter with a couple of lurchers to run coyotes, and they did. My 7/8 cross ran with the other guy's sight hounds, and my dog caught it and rolled it, and the rest of the pack came in, and the coyote ended up against a shed wall, and they had their way with him. So I think I had the dogs that could have caught them if I lived in the open. And there was a mangy, sick one that came out of a hedgerow to grab a dachshund, and my 2 lurchers grabbed him, but he didn't have much fight, but he did harm to the dogs when he did fight, as much as he had in him. And he got his revenge because he was totally mangy. So my dogs had to be treated for mange.
But were it not for your lurchers, that could have been extremely bad for your dachshunds.
Yes, the lurchers were with me. The dachshunds were ahead along a hedgerow, and my best bitch, Steffi, was out front. And I saw the coyote come out of a hedgerow to grab her. And of course, your heart stops. But the lurchers saw and took care of that dude. I had a dachshund carried away by a coyote in northeastern New Jersey Industrial Park. She had puppies and lost the litter. So I took her out running with 2 or 3 other dachshunds and the lurcher. And the coyote came out of nowhere and probably 6 feet in front of me, grabbed that little bitch and ran off with her.
Nothing you can do about that.
No. I mean, I had a shovel in case we got into a groundhog. And I yelled, and everybody disappeared. And then I'm running around trying to collect my other dogs. And no, I did not have lurchers with me at that time. I was just running the dachshunds because it wasn't that big an area. And that little bitch, Gavia, came back to me, I think because of all the hoopla with me running around. that the coyote had planned to take the dog to its cubs, because this was in May, and drop it for her pups to kill, like a mother would teach. And Gavia, because of my hoopla and shouting and running around, Gavia got back to me. Yes.
The dog that the coyote picked up came back to you?
Yes. Picked her up by the back of the neck and shook her and ran off. I mean, on Route 17.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
That's like my biggest fear.
Yes.
So,
but I
she
think
survived that?
Yes, she did. She had 4 punctures, and I picked her up, put her in my coat, and we went, by now I'm screaming for my other dachshunds, get back here, get back here. And they did. Put everybody in the car, and I took her home and looked her over. And really, they were only punctures. They were not, I didn't think they were life-threatening.
Okay.
So I put her in her kennel, and she stayed in her kennel and didn't want to come out. All right. And it took a couple days for her to get over it, so to speak, which she did. And we went back to hawking over her and the other dachshunds. But if I went into an area and there had been a coyote, she would get on a log or a rock and she'd booger bark that there was one around, because you could see her sniffing up leaves and the stalks of plants. And if she smelled up so high, you knew it was a coyote, and she would booger bark. And I'm
not familiar with the booger bark.
That's what Ginger did today.
Yes,
yeah.
Right. That boo boo boo. That
it's not like that's not a rabbit. Whatever
she said,
that is.
I'm not going there.
Yeah.
So we ran into them fairly frequently in North Jersey, up in Green Pond where I lived.
What, like, asking for myself, what can you do to like avoid your dogs getting taken? Like, can you be loud in the field?
Yes.
Run another dog with you is being noisy. Because it's when you're hawking, you're tempted to just be like, just enjoy it, let the dogs work in peace and quiet. But when the dog is 300 yards away from you working a rabbit and the bird's working with the dogs, it's like coyote doesn't even know you're there unless the wind's right. And it's like,
they know you're there.
They know you're there. And when your little dog opens and you say, oh, good, it barks on the trail.
Yeah.
That's just calling the coyote.
Exactly. That's what I think every time.
Well, in another May is the worst time when coyotes have their young and they're hungry and they hunt day and night. I knew of a briar patch up a mountain on a power line that I wanted to check for rabbits. And I don't know if you've ever had this happen, and it's going to sound weird, but I think of places I want to go. And something inside me says, don't go.
Mm-hmm. Casey probably goes anyways.
No,
sometimes I go
particular
anyway.
Spot that I feel like my bird caught a rabbit, carried it for whatever reason back into this spot. Every single time I enter this strip, real thick. I don't know if it's like possessed, but I just feel like something's watching me every time I go in there.
Yes.
And I'm like, there's probably rabbits in here, and I don't go in there.
Right.
I just work the edge of the field and this other spot and stuff. I don't actively go in there because I have a feeling that something's going to happen in there.
Well, the same thing happens when I think, oh, I want to hit this place, that place, and something inside me says, don't go. So I go anyway. And this place I went anyway. And it's all rocky, but there's briars up there. Had the lurcher and probably 3 or 4 dachshunds. And they were all exploring, and it was kind of a peninsula of rock, like outcrop. And the one little tiny bitch, Kicker, 6 pounds, she went around this way, and I heard her barking tree because she liked to tree squirrels. And then her barking turned aggressive. And then there was a scream. And I went hauling back, and I called the lurcher, and the coyote came trotting out with Kicker in its teeth and its mouth. And I yelled and hollered, and the lurcher came up, and the coyote dropped Kicker, and she died in my arms. He crushed her chest. It wasn't a throat and all this other stuff. He just crushed her chest. And the lurcher chased it out of sight and came back, lost it somewhere. I really don't believe there is anything, make noise, speak. They don't like a human voice. But where I lived in Mawa, I think they're so used to people.
Yeah, right.
They come in the backyards and take. So, an awareness.
They're everywhere. There's no avoiding them either.
I know a woman who had standard dachshunds, and she laughed at me that my dogs didn't open on the track. And I told her, it's because it calls a coyote. I don't really want them barking. It doesn't matter that much. She had standard smooth dachshunds of European breeding, which were highly aggressive towards game. And she kind of poo-pooed the idea of a coyote being a problem. She was in South Carolina, and she started hunting her standard smooth dachshunds, and coyotes came out and grabbed one. So she got a couple of pharaoh hounds, which are Egyptian coursing dogs, assuming that would help. And when they ran into a coyote again, the 2 pharaoh hounds went after it, and they came back with their tail between their legs. A coyote is I liken a coyote to maybe a person he doesn't act quite like a person. He's a psychotic killer, and you can tell that. And I think that's the way the dogs feel about coyotes.
Right.
I used to coon hunt with my lurchers up in the mountains, and they would come back to me when a pack of coyotes would circle us.
Right.
I think one-on-one they would have chased it. But when the pack surrounded us and started yodeling and yipping, that was time to go home.
I think the creepy part is how coyotes will try and pull a dog, lure them out into the rest of the pack. I had one encounter with a coyote in my backyard with my dogs where it was hanging out by the fence, and I heard the dog that Sean O'Neill gave me going crazy in my backyard, and I looked and I couldn't figure out what it was, and I just thought maybe there was somebody walking through the woods, and I just stood in the doorway quietly and watched, and all of a sudden the shape materialized on the edge of the woods, and it was a coyote standing there, and the coyote would disappear, and then he would pop back out in another place, disappear, and pop back out. And luckily, my yard is fenced, and I have a predator wire at the top.
Good.
I don't think he quite understood all of that. I do think his goal was to try and figure out a way to get the dachshunds, because the dog that I got from Sean was standing in between him and the dachshunds.
Yes.
And so if it wasn't for that dog in the backyard, he might have just figured out a way to hop the fence, grab a dachshund, hop over. Which is what I tell anyone who says, a hawk got my dog. I said, why do you say that? And they said, he was in the backyard and he disappeared. I'm like, nah, that wasn't a hawk, buddy. That was a coyote. Snatched him up and disappeared.
I sold a good little working bitch down to a southern state. And the guy saw it happen. The coyote jumped the fence and grabbed the dachshund and jumped back out. And the man asked me when I was going to have puppies and wanted another puppy. I said, not until you get adequate fencing. I don't breed dogs to feed the coyotes. And actually, all the coyotes in North Jersey was one reason we moved to Delaware, because they were just getting here. It was always a risk. And sometimes I'd put the dachshunds down, and with all the hoopla going on, I'd see a coyote run out the other end of the patch, get in the truck.
Yeah.
Can I go back to the bull terrier?
Yeah, please.
I had a 60-pound bull terrier I called Joshua, and they're wonderful dogs. They helped raise my 2 boys. The boys could bounce all over them and never hurt.
So when you say bull terrier, are you referring to like the Spuds MacKenzie bull terrier? Do you know the Budweiser mascot?
Okay, and Target.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, yes, the white English bull terrier.
Right.
I had several of them, and this one was Joshua. And I hunted him, and there was nothing could stay in a hole if he put his mouth on it. And even if whatever was in the hole was biting him like crazy, he'd just squint his eyes and pull it out. We had a groundhog under a pallet one time, and he got his front teeth on the skin on the back of the woodchuck, and he pulled it out between the slats of a pallet.
A groundhog?
Yes, which screamed.
Was it mangled into pieces?
It was screaming mightily. when he pulled it out. Not the best story, but one story about Joshua. I like to canoe. And again, the Passaic River is a low, slow river. So I took Joshua, a small plot hound, and I think one small dog. And I didn't have a gun. I couldn't carry a gun where I lived. And
That's the northern state laws.
Yes, those are northern state laws, right? I'm an honest person. I just didn't do it. And the Passaic is a twisty, windy river, and we came to a lovely, like a nice grassy field, maybe a hay field you'd call it, but not very tall grass, and no trees. The trees were all around it. So I thought, well, I'll let them out of the canoe, and they can run around a little bit, maybe get into something. Well, I put them all up there, and they're running around, and they disappeared into the trees. And the next thing you know, out comes 4 or 5 Hereford cows. And I thought, this is not good. A plot hound, a terrier. Where is Joshua, the bull terrier, right? And I hear, "Ugh, ugh." All right. And here comes this great big Hereford bull out of the woods. But his head is down and he's like stumbling, like he can't catch up with the cows. And my dog is hanging off his brisket.
Joshua, the best part to hang off of.
Joshua,
what I'd be doing.
Yeah.
60 pounds, has got that, his heritage. He's a bull terrier, right? You grab and you hold on. And the bull kept tripping over him because he was, I said, boy, I've got a slingshot in the canoe, but I don't know what else I'm going to do.
Yeah. Oh my God. You had another story in a canoe. And I remember I had a little situation, and then you told me, don't feel bad. And then you told the story. I can't remember the exact story, but I almost got sucked down a storm drain.
Oh, you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you told me a story that you had, and you were having fun going on a river in the canoe, and you had to lean back or something, and you went under a bridge.
Oh, yes. Right. The river flooded, but in order to get where we wanted to go, you had to crouch down, lay down in the canoe and try to paddle out the side and keep the dog's head down. Yeah, it's a good way to get places. And I remember something about you going down a flooded.
We thought it'd be a good idea to take our lake kayaks, 2 of them, with my friend that's not experienced, and I had no business doing it. And we just put it in our local creek that turned into a whitewater rapid. And we went through the patch of woods that I used to fly my birds. And I didn't even think, oh, well, when we start going through the neighborhood, there's bridges everywhere. So we start going, and we literally go under the bridge. We lay back, just like Teddy was saying, to get under the bridge. And when we look up, it's retaining wall on either side and a giant pipe at the end, just like, and we both reach for the side. But the water's going so fast that the kayaks just spin backwards and immediately capsize. And I just remember hearing the thunk of the kayak going through the thing. And I grabbed like a branch of something, and it was like from a movie. I'm not even joking. And I literally swing in the water and grab my friend, and then my friend grabs, and we get out, and we were like young. We were like 17. We started crying and stuff. And like, we
left that part out.
Yeah,
well, we keep it real.
And then my dad was so pissed, and I just remember to this day, actually, you lost my kayaks, you pricks. That's like, he was like, I was like, I almost died. He's like, and he was just mad about the kayaks because they were $300 a piece or whatever.
I got a canoe for my, I don't know, like 19th birthday or something. And the maiden voyage, I almost lost it. I had no idea what I was doing. I went to a river that was like below a dam that was flowing and had rocks in it. And I tried to like beach it eventually when I figured out like this is bad. It's gonna wreck And then as I'm getting out of it, like it turns and water starts getting into it and it starts to like sink. And I find like that Herculean strength when you've got the adrenaline to just ride it and pull it out of the water. Yeah. I had no business doing that. I had no idea what I was doing.
It could have ended really badly.
we used to cut firewood in a property we had access to, and I had Joshua, the bull terrier, loose, and he chased a deer up over the mountain. I said, oh, great. He didn't come back. So drove around looking for him. Nothing. So we went home because we were an hour from home. And the next day I get a phone call. We've got your dog. So, okay. Apparently he had chased the deer, didn't find his way back to me. So he went to the first house and they let him in because he's very friendly. And the grandmother was at the dining room table and the family cat was under the dining room table. So Josh was trying to have his way with the cat, and the husband grabbed a piece of firewood and knocked him out.
Oh, my.
Cold conked him. And then he called me, because he saw the collar on the dog. So
Good dog.
I said, I'm terribly sorry. I lost it. I sounded a little weepy and a little girlish, I guess. So I said, I'll get you a kitten.
Did he kill the cat?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay.
So Carl and I drove up there to get Josh that next day. And Carl wouldn't get out of the truck. He said, you go.
He's so funny, Carl. He's so funny.
So I went and got my dog, and that was embarrassing, but stuff happens.
Oh,
so
yeah.
on the subject of cats, tell us about your run-ins with cats over the years, because that's kind of a common thread thing. We're of the opinion that feral cats, outdoor cats, they're horrible for the environment. They're detrimental to game populations.
Agreed.
Things like that. So what do you have to say about cats?
They don't belong loose in the woods. And people, in my opinion, people that work in office buildings or factories should not feed the cats behind the building. Somebody dumps one off and pretty soon they have kittens. And there was a man up where I used to live who built cat houses. They were like doll houses, but made specially for cats.
That sounds like something Casey would get into in his older age.
Yeah.
When he's not doing falconry anymore, he builds like really intricate cat houses.
The guy-
But the only difference is that the door would just, after they go in, the door would lock and it would turn into like a jigsaw movie. Let's play a game. And then let's play a game, little kitty. Yeah, I would do that.
And people would build little houses out of straw bales for the
I
cats.
see it all. They take big storage containers.
Yes.
You've seen this, Teddy.
Right,
And they
and
flip
cut
them
the-
over and then they cut a little entranceway in it. And it's just...
Have you ever seen a great spot for rabbits and you go, oh man, I'm going to check that out. And you get out and realize it's a cat colony.
Or I'll have a good little spot, tiny little spot, great little spot, and somebody feeds a feral cat and no more rabbits.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
I've told this story before, but one day I took my daughter to the doctor and it wasn't her usual doctor. So it was a place I've never really been before. And as I pull up, I'm rubbernecking the
Sure.
empty field next to it. That's just
Sure.
brush and briars. And I'm like, oh man, all right. As soon as we get done, we're looking for rabbit sign. Get out there and it's perfect. And I see nothing. There's no songbirds.
Mm-hmm.
There's no rabbit sign. There's nothing. And then I see the Tupperware containers turned over on their upside down with the hole in them. And that was actually the first feral cat colony that I'd ever laid eyes on. I knew they existed.
Isn't that
But I went
amazing?
up like, what is that? And I
Uh-huh.
walk up and it's got a hole and it's got hay stuffed in it. And then I see another one that has food in it. And it's just, the place was a wasteland because of those cats.
It tends to transmit diseases because not only do the feral cats eat there, but the local possums and raccoons.
Mm-hmm. And they all get what the cats have. They share
Yep.
what they have with the cats.
Right. Not everybody has a rabies shot.
I know a guy, actually, I've never told you this. He got toxoplasmosis
Moses from a cat.
from a feral cat in his eyeball.
That's
Oof.
nice.
He's a hunter too. He listens to the show. He's a friend of the show. I'm not going to say who he is. He'll know. He it wasn't his cat. He was just out in the field, just doing his thing. And he starts to lose vision in his eye one day.
The cat scratched him or something?
No, he never even encountered the cat. He never even encountered the cat.
He got it from somewhere.
And he's not a cat owner. So somewhere out, he touched dirt that had it in it and got it in his eye. And is struggling to this day. And this is a sportsman who needs his vision,
One more reason to keep those things.
I have done a lot of earthwork in my life with dogs going to ground, working things. And the worst thing in a hole is a tomcat.
Really?
He's a feral cat.
Okay. I'd wondered if you'd run into those in
one particular place. They all lived in holes. There weren't many trees, and apparently there weren't, sheds for them to live under. But almost every groundhog hole had a feral cat that would run into it.
You should have put some upside down Tupperware, Rubbermaid bins out there for them. Yeah. A hole in it.
Or put them over the hole and then put a rock on it.
Casey would back a cement truck up to it. So any crazy cat stories you want to share?
No.
Okay. So we're just gonna have to make the assumption that, or we'll get the good ones after we turn this off.
I've had a lot of experience with them.
So we a long time ago in this conversation, we were talking about David Hancock.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. That's okay. And I'd mentioned to you one day, and we are definitely going to get on this subject, and I guess we should just jump to it after this. But I was reading a book by the author that you introduced me to. So for those of you listening who, I'm sure I've told this story, I was telling Teddy how much I was enjoying killing rats that were out in my quail barn. And she said, "Oh, you ought to read a book. There's one called Tales of a Rat Hunting Man by David Bryan Plummer." So I hopped on eBay and ordered a copy of it, read it, and to this day, it's my favorite book. I don't think I've ever read a book that I like as much.
He was a very good writer.
Very good writer. And then afterwards, Teddy goes, "Well, if you like that," he wrote about 500 others. Yeah. So I'm still working on my collection of his books, and I love everything he's written. But one day I was reading a book, and there was a chapter about there was a paragraph in a chapter about an American huntress named Teddy Moritz. And I was like, Teddy told me that she'd met him, but I was like, okay, so you were in a book too about him. And then she said, "Yeah, I was in another one that you probably haven't read yet, but it's by Hancock." So let's go back to Hancock and let's talk about that.
Well, I stayed with them. I visited them. I stayed with Brian once, and I stayed with Hancock the next time, and we got along with the families, a great family. And I guess the time I was there, we talked a lot, and he put me in a chapter when he wrote about lurchers. I think he calls it a letter from America, because they don't have some of the quarry we have. So I would send him pictures of the lurcher I got from him, who was a great dog, with a raccoon, a woodchuck, a possum. They don't have those in England, and how she worked them and how good she was at them. And I ended up in his book.
What was the book called?
I think My Life with Lurchers. I have it in the back room where you are not going to go and borrow it.
I'll put my hands up and I'll just walk in and check out
you remember that shotgun I had with me today?
I do.
Okay.
And I saw how good you are with the firearm, so I'm not going to mess around and find out. But did you run dogs at all with Hancock when you were there?
We went spotlighting at night.
Lamping, as they say, right?
Lamping. Excuse me. Yes, they
call it a torch, don't they?
They do. Do they call it a torch?
A flashlight is a torch.
I need my torch.
But we went lamping, and they did it the old-fashioned by wearing a car battery on their back to power the lamp.
We need to do that.
They also have an interesting name for cigarettes out there.
See, if they called that, yeah, I know, Teddy. I'm sorry. You would be a smoker if they called him that, wouldn't you?
Good.
Sorry, Teddy.
No, fine.
So tell us about the lamping.
We just walked some fields at night. Hancock's son was very good at lamping, and we would walk with a lurcher on a leash, and they would spotlight rabbits or fox, whatever, and slip the dogs, and either they caught it or they didn't catch it. We were up most of the night and we caught a few, and I can see where that would be a good way because they have so many rabbits. I mean, so many rabbits that.
Now they have hares and rabbits, right?
Right. What we would call a jackrabbit, a hare, right?
But they're
bigger than.
But they're actual rabbits. They're different from our cottontails that they'll excavate warrens, right? Holes in the ground.
They're rabbit. The European rabbit digs a hole to live in a den like a groundhog.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they use ferrets and bolt them out to either hawk or the dogs. But at nighttime, they're all out feeding, and you see their little eyes out there. And I rat hunted with Brian Plummer at Hancock's duck farm.
Okay, so when you told me that you did that at duck farm, that was Hancock's.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Plummer lived in a little cottage. There's a picture in the book. And he was a school teacher, and he taught boxing. And he was a very unique person. Opinions vary about him.
What kind of person he was?
Did he really do the things he wrote about?
I'm sure he had a flair for exaggeration to some degree.
To cover all aspects of it, but he did go with people who did it, and he did rat. He had quite a ratting team. Go to Hancock's duck farm, and they were long houses, kind of like you're picturing a chicken coop, long house with the ducks in it, and feeding troughs. And when you opened the door at midnight and flipped the light on, there were rats everywhere.
God.
So Brian had a team of young men who had Russells and Patterdales and what have you. And they would just try to kill every rat they could before they got out through the holes in the wall and everywhere else. And when we were done with that house, we shut the lights off, went to the next house, did it over again. I forget how many duck houses there were. And then you could come back and start over. There were endless rats.
Sounds
endless
fun.
Rats.
And that was his main sport. Like, he did a lot of other stuff based on what I read, but his mainstay was ratting.
Was rats. His claim to fame, like going on TV and the ferret bit either him or the announcer. And yeah, but he could write. He could definitely write.
There's a clip of that somewhere?
There's some clips on YouTube for sure. Yeah, actually, that one is on YouTube.
Yeah.
That one is. And that's where they said he got famous in England. I don't think his fame ever carried over here. But so the ferret bites the newsman, and what caught on so much about it was how he was Brian Plummer was just so nonchalant,
blasé about it,
careless about it.
Yes.
And the guy's in pain. He's got a ferret hanging off his finger, and Brian Plummer's like,
yeah, they bite.
Yeah, that happens.
Or like Steve Irwin getting bit on the throat by the python on TV live
with no worries, except imagine if the python bit like David Letterman and Steve Irwin's like,
too
that's
bad.
what snakes do.
I've got a good lurcher hawk story that involves a friend of mine that I still laugh about. My friend Stacy lives in she lives in southern New York, and she got a lurcher from Hancock, slightly smaller bitch, and we used to drive around at night and spotlight rabbits and slip them out of the car, and she had a van which opened nicely.
Perfect.
Stacy was very keen on it, and she had some dachshunds. Well, we very cold day, we went to an industrial park that backed up to an old railroad track. So we ran the lurchers first. We had a bunch of dachshunds, ran the lurchers, got some rabbits, put the lurchers back in the car, and took the hawk out. And there was a big ditch down the middle along the railroad track, and it was all frozen. It was probably 20, 25 degrees. I mean, it was cold. And as those darn dachshunds were working down this ditch, they put out a deer, a doe, and she was injured, and she went up to a chain link fence and was going to fight the little dogs. All right. Well, I think there were 4 or 5 of them, and they convinced that deer to leave the fence, and it hobbled and ran back to that ditch and jumped on the ice, which broke. So now you got a deer up to its chest in ice water. All right. And 4 or 5 dachshunds climbing over it, thinking they can kill it. And 2 of us, owners, And of course, my Harris took one look at that and went up the mountain, said, "You're on your own, love." And we were a good ways from the car, and all this is going on. And I'm yelling at the dachshunds. Well, of course, they're not going to stop. So I said to Stacy, "Go get the lurchers." But she had to walk back the railroad track and over a trestle, which was only 6 feet high. But she's not steady on her feet, and she wouldn't do it. She wouldn't go get the lurchers because it would have been over right then. Okay. So that deer kept floundering in the ice, and the dogs, like it was, the water was freezing on their coats. They were like covered with crystal, and so was the deer. And I'm in there trying to get the dogs off the thing. Well, the deer decides to come up on land. I said, well, that's it. So I jumped on the deer's back, and I took out my sheath knife, and I stabbed it in the heart 6 times. And that stopped the deer. Okay.
You always said never to. You don't go for the throat like you would think. You always
no. When the heart's right there.
You just go right in the ribs.
Yeah. It was not a big long knife, but and the deer's heart is pumping, so it's available. And she started gushing, so that ended that. So we gathered up the dogs, still yelling at them. And I said to Stacy, "You have a boyfriend in Hanover, in the next town over, don't you?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Call him up because I'm about hypothermia now because I'm wet everywhere and it's very, very cold." I said, "Call him up and have him come help us get this deer to my car." So she calls the guy and he says, "No." I said, "What do you mean,
she
no?"
dumped him.
Yeah.
She dumped him.
I said, "All right." So we left the deer there and we got our bad dachshunds, and the hawk had come back because he'd seen the blood, and he said, "Well, I can be a part of this."
Yeah.
And I'm, starting to shake by now because I had tall boots and they were full of water and my clothes was pretty cold. So I was able to drive the car a little bit closer, and then I dragged the deer to my car, put it in the car because I wasn't going to leave it there. It was good meat. And I don't know, it was a foolish thing to say. I said, I need to go to the restaurant and get some hot soup or hot coffee because I was an hour from home and I was really, really cold. So I said, "Call your boyfriend, ask him if he'd at least bring me some dry socks. Come to the diner." All right? No. He said no.
Grief.
Oh my goodness.
Was she dating like Harrison who traveled through time or something?
So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, needless to say, I got home and got warm. And I had hypothermia one other time when we had 4 inches of wet snow. And I had the lurchers and I had Steffi, one of the dachshunds. And again, the Passaic River is a floodplain. And we walked through the snow. And I had boots on, but when I walked, I kicked the snow up. And my pants were corduroy, so they absorbed the water, the snow. And we went all the way back, and I saw tracks of a human being going away from where we were. And I said, "Oh, somebody else is out in the swamp." And we found a dead deer. The guy had shot a deer and left it because he probably saw me coming. All right. Well, okay, I didn't want the deer, didn't want to be involved with the person. So I turned around and we started back, and we found in a mound a fox den. And Steffi went in, bolted the fox, and the big dogs caught it. And I thought, oh, good. So I picked the fox up, and we head back to the truck. And we came to another bulldoze mound with fox tracks in it. Steffi goes in, runs the fox out, and the big dogs catch it. So now I've got 2 fox. And apparently I was already going into some kind of hypothermia because I couldn't hold them. They kept slipping out of my hand.
Yeah.
All right. And I knew something was going on. So I started walking back to the truck, and I would drop them and pick them up and drop them, foxes, and pick them up. Got to the truck. And then I'm trying to, these are the old days, I'm trying to put the key in the lock, to unlock my truck. And I was like a woodpecker. I couldn't get the key.
Oh, man. Jeez.
Yeah. It was...
By yourself?
Oh yeah. Nobody knew where I was. Carl used to yell at me, "Tell me where you're going." Well, I'll start going someplace, and I say, "No, let's go over here."
Right.
Pre-cell phone days.
Pre-cell phone, right. So I get home, and there's a picture of me holding up 2 fox, and I look pretty poor, but it was an exciting day to get 2 red fox. But that's the second time I had hypothermia.
Jeez.
Yeah. It was an interesting phenomenon, but here I am. Let me tell you about Picatinny Arsenal. You know Picatinny Arsenal?
I've heard of it, yes.
Yeah,
I have no idea what it is.
It's a big military base where they make things that go boom.
Oh, I heard there's a lot of rabbits there. Well, there used to be.
Well, they have a hunt club, and they stock pheasants.
Oh, okay.
But it's got chain link fence, of course, all around it, especially since 9/11. But because that's a back road to the supermarket, I kept an eye on the fencing that they put up.
Of course.
And I always notice that when it goes over a little drainage stream, it's all rocks. But those rocks move and the deer go under there. Well, if a deer can go under, I can go under. Not that I try to go in there and hunt, no. But that particular day, I had been hawking, didn't catch a rabbit, and I was not in a good mood. So we're coming past Picatinny, and there's a cock pheasant running down the road. Well, what we did?
Yeah.
What do you think I did?
Of course.
He's away from the fence up in the woods, probably a stock bird that got away from him. So I let the bird out, no dogs, because we're on the road. It's not busy, but let the bird out, and she sees the pheasant. Pooh, she goes after it, right? Boom, the pheasant comes up and flies over their fence into Picatinny Arsenal. I'm like, oh. And she catches it.
Great.
Flopping around. Now, do I go around to the front of the base and knock on the door and say, "Mr. Army Man, can I go in and get the hawk?" And I thought, no, I can fit under that fence. And there's a perimeter road. So I squeeze under there and I tippy-toe over and get the hawk off the rabbit. And I'm watching back and forth. And then I slide back under the fence, and the bird, of course, flies over, no problem. I came home with a pheasant.
That's a great story.
So you poached on an army base? Is that what you're saying?
The bird did. I did not.
Oh.
I retrieved the bird.
That's awesome.
On the subject of deer, a friend of yours that I met. No.
No, it's right.
Questions that I would love to.
A friend of yours that I met.
Forbidden fruit.
I won't share his name. He had mentioned to me a story about his lurchers catching a deer in front of a church. Do you remember this?
The church or the deer sought sanctuary.
Like Quasimodo.
So let's just say you're out with your lurchers, right? And you jump a deer. Your dog's chasing them. Nothing you can do about that, right? You could try and recall your dogs, but they're not going to stop.
Not when there's 2 of them. No.
Right. So could you fill in the blanks on this story that I'm getting at here?
All I remember is it was if it's the same one, and I probably don't remember it correctly, I'm sorry. But it took refuge up on the top of the steps, and the lurchers were having their way with it. And a deer is like a rabbit when it's being had, blah, blah, right? And I think there was a state policeman involved, and we got out of there. The better story was we were coming home, probably that same person. We were coming home from having run the dogs in another part of Jersey, and it began to snow very heavily. And before we started home, there were several inches of snow. And this is one of the things that I can picture anytime I want to. On the way home, we knew one more spot we really should have checked. So we drive up in this industrial park, and it's essentially a conifer forest, fir trees. And now it's getting dusky dark, and you've got all the snow falling.
That's nice.
And these lurchers, I think we had 3 or 4 of them. They're cruising through here, and they put up a deer. And it was the most ethereal experience to see all this going on through the snow.
That's cool.
It was one of those sights. I'll tell you a story about a lurcher. He's a 7/8 cross. He was off a Hancock bitch to a pure greyhound. He was the most intuitive dog I've ever owned. He knew, he felt for people, and he was an excellent hunter and very fast. And the boys, my kids named him the Big Kahuna. And we lived up in the mountain there. And Kahuna lived in the house part-time.
Oh, he must have been special to live in your house.
Yes, he was. He was Kenny's dog, my son.
So for people who don't know, this is a dog-free home.
Yes.
There's plenty of dogs outside, but none in here.
There's a husband in here, and the dogs are outside with his tractors. And we always knew if Kahuna had been in the kitchen, because if there was butter on the table, it had big tongue marks. He wouldn't go up on the table, but he would reach. He stole eggs from the chickens. He'd walk by, and there'd be like egg yolk hanging out his mouth, and he'd be sneaking by.
Yeah.
And you could give him pistachios in the shell, and he could get the nut out and spit out the shell.
Oh, that was a talented dog.
Which is cute stuff. But he would also bark at my boys when they were down in the woods lighting firecrackers.
So he was a tattletale too.
Yep. And he was a dog that could count. We had a lot of squirrels up there. And if he treed a squirrel, and there were multiple squirrels, 2 or 3, I could shoot one and he wouldn't leave the tree. Now tell me how he did that. And if I shot 2 and he wouldn't leave the tree, there's a 3rd one up there. All right?
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. Very useful dog. The best thing he ever did, my mother lived with us for a while, and where we lived went uphill around a lake. And Carl and I were on the left-hand side of the lake with chainsaws cutting firewood. All right? We didn't know that my mother had taken a walk up the right side of the lake, and she was not steady on her feet. And she had fallen, which we didn't know. And of course, we couldn't hear her because of the chainsaws. Well, twice while we were working, Kahuna came and barked at us like Lassie. He would look at us and bark, and we thought he was barking at the chainsaw noise. All right. Not real sure, not paying attention. So we came down to go to lunch, and my mother wasn't there. So I figured out something was going on, and I followed the dog up the right side of the lake, and Mom was okay. She just couldn't get up. All right. But that dog played Lassie and came to get us. So that was a very special lurcher.
You had mentioned, was that the same lurcher that intercepted a stranger at your house?
No, that was a Hancock lurcher. You had to go upstairs to come to our house, and Keeper was very friendly with everybody. You know, he was good. But one day, a fellow we knew came to the house, and he was inebriated. And I didn't know that. I just knew his truck came in, and he wanted to come up the steps. And Keeper always greeted people, "Hi, how are you?" type of thing. And he wouldn't let this man come up the steps. He was not unfriendly. You know, he wagged at the guy, and the guy petted him. But he would not let that man come up. And I had other lurchers that if I ever saw anybody in the woods, what I never, very, very rarely did, the lurcher would always stand between me and the person. And if I walked on with Keeper, if I walked on boulders and unsteady ground, he would walk beside me so I could hold him. I didn't ask him to. I didn't grab for him, but he could see me tottering around. There's enough guard dog in them, service dog in them, that they're very attuned to people. He was Kenny's dog. He was a sweetheart of a dog.
Now, that's not the type of a lurcher probably would not attack somebody for you, would they?
No.
Yeah.
No.
But just
none that I ever had from Hancock.
But do everything but, protect you, help you.
And they're big enough, and they look like they'd hurt you.
Right.
We lived on a mountainside, and it was private property. You're not supposed to ride mountain bikes down through this property. And the lurchers used to wait for them because these guys thought they could get coming fast down the mountain and go past our house. And the lurchers could hear them coming. And they would chase them on down the mountain. I mean, you could hear the person screaming on down the hill type of thing. There were a few wrecks, but the dogs always came back. So,
So what was the last lurcher that you had?
that I used really was Keeper, the one in North Jersey. I tried a couple here, but there's too many deer. The fields are too small. There's too many, and even the fox will run right across the road. I don't need one here because I can carry a gun on these farms. And if I need to kill something, having a lurcher in the woods with you is like having a gun, pretty much. But here, one I tried, she kept putting the hairy eyeball on the Amish horses that went by. So, no lurcher.
I wanted to ask you on the subject of lurchers. So, to those of you listening who don't know, it's a sight hound crossed with a working breed, like a collie. Whippets. I've got a whippet, as you know. Jury's still out on him. You worked with at least one whippet, right?
Yes.
And so tell me about your time working with the whippet.
She was a natural. I got her from a coursing kennel many years ago. And she behaved with the terriers and worked with the pack and you'll see the pictures in the albums. She was right in there pulling out anything that needed to be pulled out and running down rabbits. She was quick on rabbits.
It's just breathtaking to watch one on a sprint.
Yes, absolutely.
When we were talking to Sean, I don't know much about. I'm a novice with sight hounds, but I can't imagine that there's a faster dog on a sprint than a whippet.
No, they in a sprint, they have it and they recuperate quickly. They go and they come back and they're ready to go again. She killed fox. She could kill fox. Raccoons were a little, the reason, and she pulled groundhogs out and,
would you call raccoons a tougher customer than a fox and a groundhog, obviously?
A fox will bite hard, but a raccoon will bite hard and use its claws and wrap around a dog. Ask Sean about the patterdale that was on the dog's head and, chewing on him.
Have you ever heard the stories about big boar raccoons drowning dogs?
Yes, I've heard the stories. And
do you believe those?
Yeah, my dad had coon hounds and he never lost one. But even the lurchers, when they went after him in the water, sometimes you could see that it was going to turn the other way. But the lurchers, they managed.
So how would you get a raccoon slip with lurchers?
You can call them in like you call fox in.
Yeah, tell us more about that.
Go out at night in an open area and blow some kind of predator call. They come to everything.
So
they're a nuisance to some guys that want to shoot fox because the darn coons come in all the time.
Distressed rabbit.
You ever seen that video of guys sitting, I guess, at the base of a tree with one of those predator collars, and he's playing like two raccoons fighting, and you see the raccoon come running full speed and tackle the machine?
Yes.
Right in front of him, and then it realizes what's going on and like spins out and runs away.
If you can get the sound of raccoons fighting or baby raccoons, that works. That works.
And you can hunt raccoons at night.
Yes, spotlight them and
states,
tree them.
Yeah,
definitely in my state. So I guess means of take, you could do it with. I mean, you can. Yeah. I'm sure you could do that just fine.
Yeah, unless it you got to read the regs. Unless it specifically says you're only to use this caliber or whatever. Like if they specifically put the exact means of take, I think, but
they probably don't, right?
They do in New Jersey. There is a list of manner.
Of course they do.
Manner and means of take. These are the weapons you can use.
Some are vague, where you can just be like, oh, all right.
Do they
can be taken?
Can they be taken with dog on the regs in Jersey?
No, it doesn't say you can. It doesn't say you cannot. But the manner and means of take, they do spell out this kind of bow, that kind of bow, this kind of gun, this shell. That is the only way you can take wildlife.
They got too much time on their hands.
Yeah.
We always said in Fish and Game, too many people, not enough resource. You've got to keep them out. Let's go to bears, all right?
Yes.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Please.
That's Casey's favorite subject.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
I know. He's all the time.
Nonstop.
Crying about bears.
Once again, behind an industrial park and an apartment complex, it was in February, and I had 3 dachshunds and the Harris hawk. Okay, and it was a big hillside that came down to a swamp, and they were going to build, and they didn't, so it grew up in rabbit habitat. And at the bottom, it was kind of swampy. So I had the bird up, and we're working through the edge of, the maples in the swamp. And this is in February, not a leaf on a tree. And when a tree falls over, it pulls up a big root ball, and there were greenbrier in front of it. And the 3 dogs were barking in at the root ball. The sun was on it, it was a nice warm spot, but they wouldn't go in. And I thought, well, it's February, the male coons are out catting around, and he just happened to sleep in there. Well, there was a little growl, and then I couldn't get to where they were because of the greenbrier, but I could walk up beside the root ball. All right. And I kept saying, get them. And they're barking like crazy. And this bear walks out.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, we saw bears a lot where we lived, a lot. So I had an eye for a bear and a bear. This was a bear. When they get so big, they have the Roman nose.
Yeah.
And you can't hardly see their ears because their head is so big. And he came out swinging his head and popping his jaws the way they do.
Jeez.
And he looked at me and he looked at the dogs. And I had a little adrenaline overload going. And at the time, I did have a 2-shooter Derringer, all right, for raccoons and what have you. I took it out and I cocked it. I figured if he goes for the dogs or for me, I'm going to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
If he kills me, they'll probably get a deer season or a bear season in Jersey finally.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I had it on him, and he stood there a while looking at the dogs and looking at me and popping his jaws like he was deciding what to do. And he backed into the root ball. He just backed into the root ball.
Gosh.
So I got myself together and I called the dog, and they were like little ducklings. Oh, thank goodness. Let's get out of here. They followed me out.
Gosh.
And again, the hawk had seen the bear, and she was up the hill somewhere. So we went on, and I think we caught 4 or 5 rabbits that day between the dogs and the hawk. And I got to the apartment buildings, and you could see where the bear had been eating garbage.
Oh, yeah.
But I watched that root ball because we worked uphill, and he never came out again. But I am grateful to him for not making things more difficult. And where we lived on the mountain, the dogs used to tree bears all the time. And I don't know why a bear trees for a 10-pound dachshund, but because they've never been hunted. But I didn't go in the woods without a shotgun.
Yeah.
Ever.
At your where you lived.
Yeah, where we lived.
Yeah.
Right. Because, you get a 300-pound bear perched up in a tree. One bear got tired of, if the lurcher's baying a bear in a tree, I call him and I can get him off. Well, I had 4 or 5 dachshunds, and that's a mistake. Once again, they aren't going to, and I can't carry 4 or 5 of them. And we had a big sow tree far from home, and I'm trying to get the dachshunds, and of course, they're trying to avoid me, right? And every time I got close enough to grab one of the dogs, the bear would bail. He didn't want me near him, and over he'd go up the mountain, and those bums would go up and tree him again, right? That's that picture on the refrigerator there. And I finally got, I think, 3 of the 4 dachshunds and the lurcher, and I'm carrying them, and I walked away and started home. But the one last dachshund, Kicker, she went over the mountain with the bear. I could hear her barking. I said, "Okay, you're on your own. I'm sorry, and I got halfway home, and she caught up with me.
Oh, good. Smart dog.
And I ran into a bear again in a mound, a bulldoze mound, and not a root ball, but the brush had grown over it. And the one red dachshund I had from Joe Guastella, Bain, he was barking in that hole. And I went up the hill to look, and it was a very sleepy bear looking back at me. It was like blinking, like, don't wake us up. I'm asleep in here. So I said, okay. And I went on around, and we had a rabbit chase. And right behind the mound where the bear was, the hawk catches a rabbit in real thick stuff. And that rabbit is screaming and screaming. And I said, you know what? That's going to wake the bear up. She's going to come over the mountain. She didn't. So that was another reason we left North Jersey. Between the coyotes and the bears, hawking became, as you well know, more of a predator hunt every time.
Hazardous.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just there's not much you can do about it.
Do you ever see them here, bears?
No. When we do, we're moving somewhere else. They come through the north part of the state, Pennsylvania. The young ones, they see them up there, and the coyotes are not barely here, and any farmer that sees them harassing wildlife can shoot them anytime. So I know they're here, and I found a roadkill one.
But they're not too common here.
No, I don't worry about them. I don't worry about them. I worry about injured deer, that my 2 dogs that are broke off deer hit a buck in a swamp when they were supposed to be chasing rabbits, and the deer had 2 broken back legs. And of course, my dachshunds could catch it and bite at it, and the thing would turn around and try to smash them with its hooves. Well, they're little eggshell heads, So I would go and try and catch those 2. I had shock collars on them. I had it up to 10. It didn't matter. They probably thought the deer was doing it to them. All right. And I had flames coming out my ears. And I would get almost to them to catch them, and the deer would hobble away.
Get them going again.
Oh, in the meantime, I hear one good little bitch, and she's running the rabbit, right? Good girl. So I get my 2 dogs, and I'm trying not to throttle them. And I start walking back to where the little bitch is running the rabbit, like we should be doing. And they alert. They hear her running the rabbits. I say, oh, good dogs. I put them down, and they go 20 feet and around behind me, and they're back on the deer.
Of course.
And every time I tried to take a video of it, but I think I was a little upset. And finally, I got those 2, and the deer, it was awful because he couldn't use his back legs, like on his knees. It was broken from the knees down. It was awful. So as I'm carrying the 2 bad dogs back, I hear the hawk catch a rabbit. I said, well, now what do I do? So I went to the car anyway, put those 2 in there. And as I start back to where I had heard the hawk, the bitch that ran the rabbit came out and said, where's everybody been? I got her.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I had telemetry on that bird, so I could find her because she was cropped up by the time I got. So deer interrupt everything. I don't like, and
there's too many of them.
Yes. I try to break my dogs off them, and for the most part, they learn.
Tell us, if you will, about the time that inspired you to start using telemetry.
Could have used it years ago.
This was the straw that broke the camel's back, as far as I know.
Yeah, hunting along a river, and bald eagles are very common here.
As we saw today. How many did we see today?
I saw at least 3 or 2 or 3.
Yeah, they're just kind of omnipresent here.
Yes, they are. They're very common. So it's a place that is wooded and along a river. And we'd had a couple of chases, and going back to the car, and a adult bald eagle came up out of the swamp and chased my hawk. And they flew down the river. And I thought, oh, great. And then she came back. My bird came back, and she was still trying to get to me. And the eagle came back. Well, this time my bird went up in the air and started soaring in circles, and so did the bald eagle. And, they became 2 little dots, and then they headed south. And I said, well, that's that.
Oh, man.
All right.
It's been nice knowing you.
Yes. Who am I going to call? Get another one. And the eagle came back. I saw it come back. And what I didn't know is, again, it was February, and they had a nest up the river.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know that. So I waited for the bird and she never came back. So I did driving around, and then I let Audubon know and the police know and everybody else. And I drove widening circles the rest of the day looking for her. And then I went home, and every day I went back and looked and looked and looked. And I worked out an agreement with a friend in North Carolina. He had a tiercel that I could borrow because I'm not going to go without hawking. Yeah. All right. And I'm in the car, going to drive down to Virginia to meet him. I got 2 dogs in the car because I'm going to run them when I'm down there. And I get a phone call. Your hawk has been spotted, has been found, I think they said. And I said, alive or dead? Oh, well, and this was on a Friday. And I said, we saw him Wednesday at such and such a place.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Very helpful, right? So I said, all right. I called Carl. I said, take a couple of chicks out of the freezer. I'm coming home, going to go look for the bird. And of course, she was 4 or 5 miles north of where I had lost her. I saw her disappear south. She was north. Now, she'd been out a week, and no one had reported bells or jesses or strange birds or anything, which surprises me because it's a fairly suburban area. So I drive, and I talk to the guy he saw the bird on Wednesday. He took a picture because my hawk was sitting on his pickup truck in a construction yard. And he took a picture of it and sent it to his girlfriend. Like, isn't this cool? And she said, you have to call somebody. You have to call somebody. So between a Wednesday spotting and when I got the call on Friday, Lord knows where she was. And I had her for 12 years, and this was in the 11th year or so, 10th year. And she and I didn't get along at all, but she could catch rabbits. So I went home, put the dogs, and they said, what? 2-hour ride for nothing? And I get the chicks and I go back, and she's on a 3-mile straight stretch where they had seen her in a woodlot. Well, that's a needle in a haystack. So I'm looking and driving slowly, and I finally found a place to pull over. And honest to gosh, where I pulled over, I looked ahead of the car, and her little head pops up out of the grass.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Where have you been? She was mousing. I pulled right up to her. I mean, on a 3-mile stretch, she could have been anywhere. So she was mousing. I said, okay. So I walk over there, and she said, oh, it's you. And she flies across the road in the trees. She didn't like me at all. So we had a little discussion about how hungry are you really, dear? And so I had earlier gone to get that tiercel, and then my bird showed up. So now what do? So the tiercel went back to him, and my bird came back to me for a couple more years.
All these years later, you're starting a new bird.
So then I got telemetry again, thanks to a very dear friend, and it has saved me. I mean, I'm
a believer in it. I think we had this discussion before that there was probably a time where bells were new technology. Yeah. And there might have been falconers who were like, I'm not using bells. That's.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not bracing that technology. No.
Well, I knew some guys that in my age category that listened to rock and roll and played in a band, and they couldn't hear anyway. Floyd Presley never had bells on his spurts.
Oh, really?
He couldn't hear them. Less is more.
They might help somebody else find them.
Well, I think that's what ultimately, but I know people that fly them without bells.
I've done it before on accident or,
whatever.
Yeah. And it's, you definitely feel like something's very wrong.
Yeah. My paranoia level goes up when there's no bells, even if there is telemetry on the bird.
It can tell you so much about what's going on. You can know where the bird is, but you hear, the bells hitting differently, and you're like, all right, that's, she's just scratching her head, or no, she's laddering around on a tree after.
Yes. What was I telling you or you about some of the places where I hawk, like one road?
Yeah, me.
Yeah. One road, they have those attachments on the side of a tractor to cut the brush. They're 2 big band saws, and they scream when they're cutting And my hawk had caught, and I couldn't find her before telemetry. And that thing was going along the road right where I was hawking. I couldn't hear the bells. One place, a guy was practicing bagpipes.
Of course.
Up on 17, what's that, Don Bosco?
Yeah.
The ball field behind there?
Yeah.
Up on that hill was always, and he's blaring away on the, I couldn't locate the bells. And other things have happened where not being able to hear the bells. So the telemetry has indeed, I mean, she was always there. She never flew away. You know, if you lose them, you leave them out overnight, and they're there in the morning happy to see you. But the telemetry made the day definitely safer. I had one bird. We used to run in an industrial park where guys ran beagles. And I lost track of the bird. Had no idea where she was. She was probably down on something before telemetry. And apparently, when I left looking for her and overnight and what have you, there were some beaglers that came in and they shot at her with a shotgun. And she left the area and ended up at a backyard pond where a policeman lived, and they had rescued little Easter ducks. and he said he had the pistol on her because he saw her looking at the ducks, and he had the pistol right on her, and he heard the bells. So he called Fish and Game. And then another bird was missing up in that area again overnight and ended up in somebody's yard that had pigeons. And they had a son who lived at home, and I think they would say he was in the spectrum. Mm-hmm. All right. And he would go out and feed the pigeons. Well, my bird took umbrage with this young man going near her pigeons, and she hit him in the back of the head. I mean, so I got
that screwed his schedule all up.
So I had called, it was at the edge of New York, so I had called New York Fish and Game, New Jersey Fish and Game, and I got the call where the bird was, and I go, and there's a 19 or 20-year-old kid, and, you know, the parents were, so I said, I'll pay for his doctor bill. And back then it was $60, big deal.
Yeah.
Nothing about psychological trauma. So I said, could I see where the bird hit him? Because he had short hair. And there was this little zit. That's about all, was a little poke in the back. There was no great claw marks or anything. So I took her back home.
That happened today. They'd own your house.
That's right. That's right.
Teddy, I wanted to ask you of any crazy things you've found in the woods.
That wasn't crazy. That was serious. Everybody finds junk that people throw away.
Yeah.
You know, cars and.
All right. Let me rephrase that for you. Two questions. What's the best thing you've ever found in the woods, and what's the worst thing? Because we know what the worst thing is.
The best thing is a dog I lost. The best thing is a bird. It wasn't the worst. It was the most unusual. We were hunting in the town where I was born and raised, and again along the Passaic River, where it's great floodplain, old farms, and I had lived in that area and knew a lot of people, but I went down there hawking, and I had 3 or 4, and that got to be a long day because I had taken back a dachshund that was a real good hunter that belonged to a man whose job got so busy that he couldn't hunt her. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll take her back. She was an independent little cuss. So I put her down, a male dog and another dog. And, you know, we walk down, and she gets into a herd of turkeys. Off they all go after the turkeys, and I'm so mad and this and that. And I hear a policeman's loudspeaker, come out of the woods, come out of the woods. So I come out, and it's a cop on patrol. He used to work for my father in a trucking company. Oh, I knew it was you, Teddy. Where's the bird? And, you know, the bird had followed me back. And she said some high school kids walked by and your dog was under the car. Well, it was that little Risa who lost track of me after chasing turkeys. So I took her back down in the woods, and it's all swampy cover. And then the male dog was a distance from me, and he starts barking, but barking like he sees somebody. And I look, and it was around the time I started needing glasses. And I look, and there's a guy by a spackle bucket. So I waved to him because I don't know that I really should be there. I know he shouldn't be there. I figured he was a deer hunter. Everybody hunted in there. So I waved, but he didn't wave back. And then the other dogs came and started barking. And I'm like, so I went over there. And as I got closer, I could see that he was actually on his knees and he had a rope around his neck. And way through the woods, I could see houses. And I said, you stupid dogs, that's a Halloween straw man that they threw in the woods. Well, Halloween dummies don't have fingernails.
Jeez. So
I walked up to him, and he was indeed on his knees with his hands down beside him and his head at 90 degrees. And he had a perfect hangman's knot around his neck, up to the branches and back down. And what he had done was stand on a couple of spackle buckets. So he had put the noose around his neck, a very professional noose, and literally kicked the bucket. He kicked the buckets out from under him and snapped his neck. And when I had found him, the rope had stretched, and that's why he was on his knees.
What was the condition of him when you found him? How long do you think he was out there?
Once again, when we used to have winter, and he had, I found out later, the first week in December, he had taken off in his car, and I found him the last week in February. But,
So he was out there a couple months.
Yeah. December, January, February.
Wow. And
he had some 5 o'clock shadow, his beard, and he was looking at the sky. It looked very peaceful. And, once again, I had a little bit of adrenaline rush. And he was he was not on a path. He did not want to be found. We're talking about pin oaks, how the branches, he was under a pin oak. So just got my first cell phone. I called Carl and told him, and he said, don't call the cops to you. You go to them and get them. So now I got to round up the dogs again. All right. And put them in the car and get the bird down, put her in the car. And I drive to the police station. You have to remember, this is the town I was born and raised in. And, I'm dressed in hunting clothes, and there had been snow. I was a little wet and this and that. And I walk in the police station, and there's this sit-faced kid. He's probably 19. He's got a gun, right? And he's behind that thick glass. He said, can I help you, ma'am? I said, I found a cadaver. I don't know why I have to be fancy. I said, I found a cadaver. Excuse me? I said, I found a body. And he didn't know what to do. So he said, I'll go get somebody. So he goes in, and here comes the lieutenant with all these little bars and stars, right? And he comes out to me, and he said, hi, I'm Teddy. And he says, I know who you are. Ooh. I never like it when
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want the police knowing anything about me.
But his brother was in my high school class. So, and I explained it to him. So he said, come sit here for a minute. We'll get the forensic guys. So we wait, and they show up, and they're in suits and shiny shoes. So they got their little tote rubbers to pull on. So they said, we need a patrolman to go with us. So, of course, it turned out to be the guy that worked for my father. He said, you again today, huh? I said, hi, Donnie. So I went in the police car. I left my car there, and we drove down, and there were 2 inches of wet snow. There was no problem getting back to where the guy was. But, I walked, and Donnie hollers, it's not a Boy Scout hike, slow down. Well, these guys in their little shoes and all the equipment they were carrying. So I got to within 20 feet of the guys, and I stopped. And they said, well, where is he? I said, he's right there. They couldn't really see him because he had a barn coat and brown pants. And they finally saw it, and the lieutenant comes. He says, let's go see if his car's down the power line there. I guess they didn't want me there when they looked at him. And I found out later, I went back, they had to cut their way in with a vehicle to get the body out. All right. So go back to the police station, write the report. Because I had asked him, are you missing anybody? And not from that town, but from the next town over. And I found out later he had some mental problems. He was 54 years old. He was a twin, and he had a job in Pennsylvania and lost the job. And he had come home, and they were used to him getting in his car and disappearing for a week, and then showing up again. And he disappeared the first week in December, and until I found him, the family wrote me a thank you note, that he liked dogs too, because they just said, she was walking her dogs, that sort of thing. And one of my thoughts was, don't desecrate the woods.
Right.
And then my second thought was, what a calm, nice place to commit
suicide. What was it that brought him back there, or brought him to that spot?
I don't know. He was a local, and he may have walked those woods. I don't know what brought him to that spot, but he chose a spot where you couldn't be seen.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was sad.
Yeah.
And I called my friends and said what I'd found, and some of them said, I'm skeeved out. That's gross. Some said,
Phil, probably.
He had a nice barn coat. Did you get his coat? No. I said, did you go through his pockets? No.
Yeah.
Thank you. No. I mean, the guy wasn't gooey or smelly or anything, because it was cold weather, and nothing had.
That's surprising that nothing had eaten on.
Well, I think because he was upright. He was on his knees.
It unnerved anything that came upon him.
Some old possum or whatever. But the crows hadn't picked on him because he was looking at them, It just was. It didn't.
Was his eyes open or closed?
Open. He had blue eyes, looking at the sky.
So it had stayed below freezing, I guess, since when he did it.
December, January, February.
These days he wouldn't have.
No, with this 80-degree heat, I'd have smelled him before I saw him.
Is that something that sticks with you, that you think about from time to time? Was it traumatizing for you in any way?
No, I don't have PTSD because I found a body.
Okay.
But, I really should. I could get money for it, right?
Yeah, you could have sued his family or something.
Yeah,
somebody
for
would definitely
trauma, right?
Yeah.
There were a few years afterwards that I didn't like the Halloween effigies that people put out hanging from trees.
Yeah.
It didn't bother me, but it was a reminder.
Yeah.
No, I don't have flashbacks or bad dreams or anything like that. And, it's one-upmanship when you ask what's the neatest thing you've ever found in the woods?
Yeah.
And I'm sure living in Northeast Jersey, we've gone by plenty of.
Oh my goodness. I think about it all the time. Some of the spots I go to, like that same thing we were talking about with the feeling you get.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm walking in a spot and it's behind some sketchy building and there's trash around.
You just shouldn't be there.
I'm like, there's probably a body here somewhere. Something's going on here. You find a shoe and you're like, why is there a shoe here?
I like when I run into a tent out in the woods.
Oh, we find this down here a whole lot. Up in Jersey, there was a girl that lived behind that ski house on 17.
Okay.
She lived up in the woods behind there.
Just living in there?
The last time I was there, and I ran into her hawking, and I told the police, and they said, yeah, we know she lives there. She's harmless. But down here, they're everywhere.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Homeless in the woods everywhere.
Well, that's I always stop and think, especially when I see a tent that's kind of collapsed.
Me
I'm
too.
like, man, I hope I don't find a dead body,
Yeah, I found one last year and it was a tent collapsed and a sleeping bag inside of it and like a briefcase, like a travel bag.
Yeah.
And tarps and stuff. And it was obviously the snow pushed it down. And I went over and I was like, there's probably a body in here. And I actually took a stick and
I always go look.
Yeah, I lifted up the sleeping bag to see if there was somebody in there dead.
My apprentice she wants a human skull real bad.
You can order them online.
She goes, if we ever find a body in the woods, I'm taking the skull.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you might have the head still, the flesh still attached. You're going to
knowing her, she would just scrape it off or something and go about her way.
That's a good falconer apprentice right there.
Right.
She's hardcore. Give her that.
That's Teddy. That's crazy.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm sure that same area I used to hunt, and it was a landfill, not garbage, but trees and bushes that the town would cut, and they would pile it and bulldoze it. And there was great groundhogs around the edge there because it was the only high ground. And I was digging one time, and I found a set of the bottom set of broken false teeth.
Oh, like dentures?
Yeah, dentures.
Really?
Yeah, I still keep it in my. It's a good luck charm. I thought, I found Jimmy Hoffa, and it grosses kids out. I love it. I says, "You want to see my good luck piece?" It's the bottom jaw, the pink gums.
That's so funny.
My gosh!
Get some mileage out of things. So I had my first dachshund, Taffy. Like I said, she came off a chain.
Yeah, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about how the start of the dachshunds in American falconry.
I'd like to talk about that, and I would like to touch on what we were talking about that blanket, explaining the
More about dachshund.
Yeah, because there's a common misconception with everybody, like we talked about, that a teckle is something different.
No,
because of the advertising, and it's not.
Right. It's the European wire hairs can be. They're good hunting dogs, but they usually have an edge to them. They're very aggressive towards other dogs and to quarry especially.
Okay.
And according to the books, and you talk to the German people, the wire hair came down from terrier mixes.
Okay.
The Skye Terrier and different low, long-bodied terriers. And also, there's also the theory that they lost nose. Now, in Europe, you're not supposed to cross coats. You're not supposed to breed a wire hair to a smooth hair. And so theoretically, most of these wire hairs are pure. But again, the name Teckel, Dackel, is German for dachshund. And it's interchangeable, like groundhog and woodchuck.
Okay.
It's exactly the same thing. But the guys that have gotten these wire hair Teckels, wire hair dachshunds, think they're superior to other dachshunds. So they're pushing them as Teckels because Americans don't know what a Teckel. Teckel, Dackel. I think they call them tax, T-A-X in some countries.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Right. But they're all dachshunds. And the long hairs, the theory is they have bird dog in them, but the Germans say it's just a gene that popped up. And also the smooth hairs are the original dachshund, Teckel, whatever. I mean, there's a Deutsche Teckel Club, DTK, all right? And they have a newsletter. And what's the name of the newsletter? Der Dachshund. Okay? It's the same.
Right.
Same animal.
That's super interesting that because the wire hair, I would say the deer, the recovery people,
The blood tracking people,
like they really did good with their marketing because it's like common knowledge that, and even for me, because I was like a little confused, I'm like, is there a difference? And there's no difference.
No.
It's just a Teckel. What we run, our long-haired minis are Teckels.
Yeah, and you run long-haired minis because I had them and they work.
Well, yeah,
I started out with a smooth. I got wires. Couldn't get good wire coats. I saw long hair, but they're long-haired dachshunds, or as I said to you in the German vernacular, the really little ones are Kaninchen Teckels, which is a rabbit dachshund. So
and that's
semantics.
And so the Kanishan is only applied when the dog is under a certain
chest circumference.
So it's not the weight or the measurements, it's just the chest.
The chest circumference in Germany at 15 months old, they measure the chest circumference, and that's what the dog gets on his pedigree. KT Kaninchen Teckel, ZW Zwerg, or nothing, and that's the normal, the standard.
And do you know you may, if you just said it, what's the limit for like what are they looking for?
I don't have the figures with me. It's in centimeters. And I have it in some paperwork here, but a Canadian is usually 12 inches circumference and under.
Is a ginger Canadian?
Ginger's.
No, she's a Zwerg.
And what's that?
Dwarf.
Dwarf.
So Ginger's a dwarf because her chest circumference is, what did we measure today?
Almost 14 inches.
Almost 14.
But
Yeah.
Kip, Franny, and Ayua, they would be Canadian.
Yes.
Yeah. Ayua was, did I say it right?
13 and a half.
No, 12 and a half.
12 and a half.
Franny's 12 exactly, and Kip is...
He's around 12, 11 and a half.
It's crazy because Aaron's dog, like, it's like a different build, but the chest is like right on par with Franny, but Franny looks so much tinier.
She's fine boned.
Okay, so she's just a...
And Moxnish, what a dog is an artificial animal. The biggest part of a dog is its chest when we're talking about whole dogs. And the Germans have divided them into 3 categories. All right. And, you know, no matter what else the dog is, what its chest circumference at 15 months is what goes on the pedigree.
Okay.
So Americans, you know, we breed everything to everything.
Right.
And AKC says 11 pounds and under is a miniature. They call them miniatures.
So they do pounds in AKC.
Yes, right, because they don't know anything about...
Do you think that should be changed?
No, because nobody hunts them.
Well, we do.
I mean, the vast majority of owners of dachshunds, what are they, the 6th most popular breed in the country? Nobody.
Doxies.
Yes. Wiener dogs, wiener dogs.
Yeah.
Sausage. The little English boy always said,
Dachshunds? Is that what some people call it?
Dachshunds or something?
Yeah. Dachshund. That's it.
Dachshund. Well,
Yeah,
nobody can spell it. You know,
Yeah.
DACH. And DACH is a badger. A dachs is a badger. And this was the dog they used for badgers. And that's how they became dachshunds.
Badger hound.
Badger hound.
So they are considered a hound.
No. Hund means dog. Badger, dog.
Well, are dachshunds hounds, though?
They're in the hound group. And I would
Okay.
say...
my heart was skipping a beat because I made a big deal. I said we're houndsmen because we run dachshunds.
Right. Well, you're right. You're right, because we use them like a hound. As they encapsulate it, they are more hound-like than a terrier and more terrier-like than a hound.
That is interesting.
Yeah, they're kind of like the perfect combo.
You can use them as at the terrier trials. They're the only non-terrier that I know of that you can use at terrier trials.
To go to ground in artificial. Right. Yes.
I'd be curious to know what the chest circumference is for like a Patterdale, like, and a Jack Russell. Like, are they on par, or are they just, to me, they look way bigger.
If you talk to the guys in England that breed whole dogs, by and large, 14-inch circumference chest is the biggest they want.
Okay. Nothing bigger than that.
No. And if you look at a Russell from the side, the chest should be above the elbow.
Okay.
And that's a very small chest. But you want the biggest head on it to fight. But anybody that does whole work regularly has the right size dog, because a dog isn't any good if he can't get up to the quarry.
Right.
You know, if he gets halfway to the quarry and has to dig his way on, there's a chance he'll dig his way in or
Block himself out.
Or not get to the quarry. The quarry will have bolted or dug away like our groundhogs do. No dog was developed for our groundhogs. What they've done is taken the Russells and gotten the den drivers again and bred them very small. Even the Patterdale people have been trying to breed them smaller to consistently get up to the quarry.
Yeah, because I've seen some Patterdales that are pretty tiny.
Yes, they've been breeding them.
And you ran Patterdales a little bit.
I had one Patterdale.
And the downfall with them was what?
She didn't have much of a nose.
Okay.
But she was very good with the other dogs. She wasn't a typical bite everything in sight. She was good with the kids.
Isn't that a Patterdale trait, though? That, it could be different now, but my understanding was they're a terrier that's known to be pretty amicable with other dogs.
Yes. And where they came from, what they were used for was mainly to go in and kill a fox or run it out because they were in the rocks. Mm-hmm. They were not the Jack Russell that they used with the hounds. Okay. A Russell is supposed to be a baying dog or, when necessary, bolt the fox. Patterdale is supposed to go in and get it done. I had a Patterdale, and she was a great little dog for many reasons. I was running again down in the swamp with the lurcher, and they disappeared chasing a cat. You want a cat story? And, of course, it ran all the way up to a farm. And I lost the two dogs. I didn't know where they were. No tracking collars. They had ID collars. And eventually I got a call from the farm that they had my big dog. You know, she had by no collars, I mean no GPS collars. They had ID collars. And when I went to get her, I thanked them profusely. They had a vegetable stand. And I said, was there a little black dog with her? And they said no, which surprised me. All right. Never saw the Patterdale again until about 5 years later. I was at another market, and a young woman came up to me. She said, I lived on that farm, and we found your big dog. She said the little black dog was attacking our cat, and my father kicked it to death.
Mm.
God.
I mean, the man was protecting his property.
Wow.
You know
Cat should
what
be inside.
I read this from Brian Plummer. He said that no good comes from your dog killing cats.
No good comes from it. It's like a lurcher chasing deer or any dog chasing deer. It's going to be on the road and roadkill. Anytime you let hunting dogs loose. I had a little bitch that she got the briars caught in the hair between her shoulder blades. And when she jumped to try to get away from that, it would dunk her in water and then lift her back up. And then she'd jump forward. And it was winter time. And I only knew that because, she barked finally in frustration. You never know. I lost one for a couple hours where we were today. She was up inside a tree baying a coon. The other dogs told me. Anytime you let a dog who's capable of getting under or in, but you also get a lot of game with them in the meantime.
True.
Yeah.
I wanted to, I'm sorry, finish your thought.
You have to accept things can happen. And if you hunt near roads, it's likely to happen.
A lot of us don't have the luxury to stay away from roads.
Right. It's like power poles with the hawk. You just...
Yeah. I wanted to go back to the differences between the dachshunds, the wire hair, smooth coat. Is that what we can call them? Or standard?
Yeah.
Smooth coat.
Short hairs, smooth hairs, whatever.
And then long hair. So you have told me before why you landed on what you did. And then, so I have no doubt knowing you, which I've told you before, my preference for the visuals or the aesthetics of dachshunds, where I've said, I like the black and tan long hairs.
Mm-hmm.
You said, really? Tell me which ones you like, Teddy.
Yeah, sure. I like the one that's getting the game.
Exactly.
I'll tell you another English saying that the terrier men have. A good dog cannot be a bad color, and a bad dog cannot be a good color.
Wow.
Okay?
That's profound right there.
Think about that. Right?
So, knowing that about you, you're not worried about the aesthetics of a dog.
No.
You're running the dog now that over the years you have determined to be the best dog for you.
Yes, I tried the Russells, and they could indeed flush a rabbit, but they couldn't track it. Because I come from a hound background. And they would run off barking, and nobody knew where the rabbit was. They were just so excited. And I know there are good Jack Russell rabbit dogs, and some can track, but
they can track better than we can, that's for sure.
Oh, well. But they also couldn't fit tight in a groundhog hole. You need to be up to a groundhog to dig to it. And when a dog, again, is, he's 6 feet in the tunnel, but the groundhog is 8 feet beyond him, and he can't get past that. So I finally saw I got that little black dog Taffy that I told you was on the end of a chain, and she changed my attitude completely. I don't know that I said it here, that my first one was on a chain at a feed store.
We hadn't got there yet, but so she was originally, that was a smooth coat dachshund.
Yes.
So before we talk about the origin of her, why the miniature long-haired dachshund instead of a standard wire hair?
They couldn't get in a hole. They couldn't get, because where I lived and where I hawked, the rabbits went in groundhog holes in the winter. And in the winter, the only thing keeping the den open is a rabbit at 3 pounds. When the 10-pound groundhog's in there, sure, any correctly sized dog can get through it to a rabbit. But, and industrial parks and construction yards, climbing up, the motor of cars, they could fit. To me, a 14-inch chest, and I don't care what it weighs, but I do like leg and narrow chests and a bad attitude.
So what, on that note, so when you're looking for a dog, or out of the old German books, because you told me this a while ago, but I thought it was really cool the way you explained it, just like almost like you were just reciting it from the book. What are the dimensions of the perfect dachshund?
The height is 1/3 the length of the body. So you want enough leg under the dog and a body that can propel it. Those of us that breed them for hunting, tend to breed them a little longer legged. Somewhere in the gene pool, there are legs in these dogs that the show breeders breed for the biggest chest and the shortest legs. Because in America, the more extreme, the better. And there are some dachshunds out there
Casey
with
lives and dies by that.
1.5 legs and a giant chest. But you figure it's not an athletic animal. Yes, it can go in a hole, but it's got to get to the hole. All right. And one dachshund book I read said they have that big chest, so they slide in on the breastbone, which they don't. They go in on their legs, and that they kick the dirt to the side like a seal flipping. Well, we all know they dig underneath themselves. So whoever wrote the book had never had a dog to ground. Many people are afraid of it. Man, woman, and child, they won't put their dog or allow their dog in a hole because when it's out of sight, they panic. Right. Many.
Had a little panicking moment 2 days ago.
Yeah, because you don't have the transmitter collar.
I will get that.
Yes. It's that, or figure out where you're going to get your next dachshund.
From you, Teddy.
Oh, a couple people.
Because when you lose a dog, you've got to get a puppy and start over.
Yeah.
And if you have a family that loves that little dog, then you're in trouble.
Doesn't.
Right. But, and I hate losing my dogs. I love my dogs as much as anybody. But if one gets hit on the road, my next thought, besides crying like a baby, is where am I going to get a replacement? And sort of like your hawk.
Yeah.
It breaks its wing in 3 places. Where am I getting a new one?
Yeah.
And you don't mean to be callous, but we have these dogs for a reason. They're sweet with the family. They make marginal pets, but they're a tool. They're for a reason.
Yeah.
And if you can't handle the loss, then you'll end up with 6 dachshunds, 17 years old, 16 years old, 15 years old, and they can't do a thing except piss in the house.
Yeah.
Put it in a pet home. Whoever feeds the dog is who they love. Yes, they love you right now, and you think they'll be brokenhearted if you put them with somebody to care for. Whoever feeds them and cuddle them is who they love. And I speak from experience of having placed some older dogs with some pet people, and I get pictures of them sleeping on the couch and big bellies, and they're happy. A dog is happy. A dog is happy. He lives for the day, for the moment.
Yeah.
You know, oh, we're going for a walk. Great. Oh, we're not going for a walk. Okay, great.
Teddy, you not? Go ahead, Aaron.
I'm sorry. Before we get off of it, though, I wanted to get specific about the coat type and why you landed on long hair. And then we
My
can
first
move on
one
from
was
that.
a smooth hair, and she hunted very well, but she would get very cold. Now, my dogs live outside, so I like to think they grow a heavier coat because they're out in the cold. I mean, they have heated coops. In the short days, you know, like a mink, the short days, but she would get cold, especially the smaller ones. I had a little 6-pound male, and I would find him huddled up under a bush trying to keep warm because he'd gotten wet in the cold and the snow. I put him in my coat. So then I went to the wire hair. I bred the smooth hair to a wire hair, and he was a very good dog. And the puppies, some were wire and some were smooth, but I couldn't consistently get all wires in the litters. And the wire hair, they can have a fuzzy, curly coat that really is never any good. Okay, consistently to breed a good wire coat, I couldn't. I bred into Germanic blood. I bred into show blood. Yeah, they were all hunters, but I couldn't say every puppy in that litter was going to have a good coat. And I would sell them to a hunter, and they'd say, well, it doesn't know what it wants to be, and that curly coat's keeping all the water on the body. And then one day I went to a field trial out in Ohio, and I saw a couple of dynamic little long hairs that were just crazed, banshee, screaming after the rabbit. I said, I got to get some of that. And I traded a stud mini wire to the guy for a bitch. And that was Steffi in the middle 90s, I think.
Who was there was some field trialing going on with long-haired dachshunds that you were able to see.
Right. Not in the East in Flemington, where I had been going to a couple of trials, but out in Ohio, an elderly couple came in from Kansas with these fireball little long hairs. And I said, I'll try the long hairs. And some have thicker coats, some have thinner coats, but they always have coats. And when I bred them together, they all had, you know, I didn't mix coats, obviously. And the wire hair, in order to keep a good coat, you have to strip out the old coat. And falconers aren't going to be bothered with that. They shave them. And then the hair does come in curly. So you don't want to have to manage an animal's coat. You know, it's hard enough to get these guys to cut the dog's nails and clean their teeth. Never mind what the coat is like. But with the long hairs, they can always take the weather. Now, the guy in South Texas would rather have a smooth hair because it's so blistering hot.
Yeah.
Do you think the coat adds protection from briars or thorns or?
Some, sure. I mean, I can pet my dogs after we're hunting, and as you well know, there'll be thorns stuck in their back, and, you know, the coat has kept it from going too far.
Most of it just kind of sloughs off of them.
Yes.
I wonder if the short hairs, I've never run one, do they get tore up in the briars?
Yes, more so. Not down the back so much, but underneath in the chest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The smooths I didn't stay with. Taffy was a good whole dog, but not much of a hound for smelling.
Mm-hmm.
So when I hit on the long hairs from these people, they were really good ones. Steffi was Aziz's mother.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And we brought a couple of dogs over from Europe to
Long hairs?
Yes, to see, you know, to add new blood. And the first dog was in 2000. We brought a dog from Belgium. And he added a lot, but he took stuff away too.
What did he take away?
Bravery. He was not a very brave. Some of his pups, Aziz, were very brave, but he was a result of a father-daughter cross.
Aziz was?
No, the stud dog.
The stud dog.
Eastbrand. So what he brought a lot too. And to this day, I still see his temperament. coming out. He gave us nice tight feet, good coat. He had a great coat. He was a nice dog. And he would also flush rabbits and then come back and say, didn't I do a great job? Well, no. Apparently that's what they use a lot of the dogs for, is flushing dogs, like a spaniel. So you live and learn. But I think those of us that breed them for hunting have succeeded with the long hairs. And somebody asked me today about color. Before you were saying, do you like a black dog or a red dog or whatever? And color doesn't matter. What I found living in the upland hardwoods is I could always see a black dog, but you can't always see a red dog. Of course, they better be moving, so you see some movement.
It's amazing how well they disappear into the leaves.
If they stand still in these autumnal leaves.
Oh, yeah.
And they're there. And you feel like an idiot because the dog's been there the whole time, standing there. And the black dogs you can always see. I don't care. I mean, if I had a favorite, I would say it's the black and tan, just because I tend to have more black and tans. The dapples,
they're neat looking.
They're neat looking. You just have to be careful not to breed it to another dapple. And it's a lethal gene, the Merle gene. There's the new white ones that are out, the piebalds. Yes. Some guys like those because the human being can see a white dog.
Really easily.
Really easily. So fine. There's some really good ones out there.
What about the blonde ones?
Muxnish.
Cream.
You'll pay more for a cream.
Nothing.
I would love to see one that's doing a good job working.
Yeah.
I know one that can really run a rabbit, and she belongs to a show person and only runs in field trials, but I would take her home in a heartbeat.
Have you tried?
It's a color thing.
It'd be fun.
She doesn't care about color at all.
No, I wouldn't go get the dog because she's cream. I would go get the dog because look at the way she's running that rabbit.
Agreed, yeah. The cream would be cool, though, because all you see is black and tan.
I call him Macho Man. The cream always rises to the top.
Oh, yeah. Sure. If there's a cream available and you go look at it, once you look at the puppies and you take the boldest, most aggressive, and hopefully it'll grow some leg. And
if I went there and there were two pups that showed the most promise, one was cream, one was black and tan. I'm taking that cream.
Go right ahead.
Yeah.
It's a dachshund. Like I said, with Taffy, she was chained to a feed shed.
Let's talk about her, because I'm not sure if you've shared with us in personal conversations how it started with you, but would you mind sharing that again for the fourth time today?
Where we bought feed for our chickens and ducks, the guy had a storage shed. And when I went to buy feed one day, he had about a 12-foot chain with a dachshund on the end. And I was into the Jack Russells, but I had read enough literature about earthwork to know that dachshunds could be whole dogs. And she was a bandy-legged, ugly little thing. And I asked the guy, where'd you get that? And apparently he knew an elderly couple who bred her to a toy poodle every heat. And they would take the cute little puppies and go to the supermarket and sit out on the sidewalk and sell them. So she was essentially a brood bitch. All right. And the guy said, but he wanted to get rid of her. The one of the elderly couple died. And now the feed store owner bought it. But he said, the problem with her is when I put the food bowl down, the chickens come to eat the dog food, and the dog lays back on the chain until the chicken's close enough, and then she charges out and kills the chicken. And I'm thinking, oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, isn't that something?
Interesting.
So for $150, I got my first AKC dachshund. All right. And I bred her. First time I had her a couple of weeks out in the kennel. Figure I'd take her out. I had the bull terrier and a Russell, and we go out along the edge of a golf course. Hour into it, I can't find the black dog. I can't find the dachshund. Oh, where is she? So I go all the way back to the truck, and there she is under the truck. Well, that wasn't a very good sign.
Yeah.
So I kept her, and the next time I took her out to exactly the same place, worked the same area, and again, she disappeared. I said, well. And on the way back to the truck, the bull terrier stuck his head in a groundhog hole. And I went over. He was listening. She was in there baying a groundhog. I gave her the opportunity, and I brought out what genetics had given her, and she turned into be a really good whole dog. She wasn't all that good as a tracking dog, but if it went in a hole, she liked the confrontation. So I bred her. I called around to the show people for a wire hair because I could see in the winter the smooth hair was cold. And I found a show wire hair, and the woman said, yes, I'll breed to your bitch, which most of the people say, oh, you're the one that puts them in holes. No. So I bred to a wire hair and got some wire puppies. And the owner of the wire hair called and said, do you want the dog? You want to buy the stud dog? Oh, sure. So I hunted that dog for a number of years and sold it to a falconer. And he was a good little dog, but got out on the road. But I couldn't consistently breed good wire hairs. And until I saw the long hair that worked. And from then on, and the first wire hair I had, Steffi, was exceptionally good. She could track anything. And she liked a confrontation too. She had a habit if the other dog got to a hole first, the other dachshund, and barking in the hole. And Steffi would go in and kind of threaten the dog in the hole. And if the dog wouldn't come out, Steffi would go to a tree and start barking like there were 3 grizzly bears up there. I mean, ferocious barking. Well, the dumb dog in the hole would come out and say, well, Steffi's got something up here. And she'd shoot around the tree and run in the hole. And more than once.
They're clever little dogs. It doesn't shock me at all.
But I came very near not to having Steffi. You talk about meant to be. We lived on the mountain, and I ran her all over the mountain. And one day she went over the mountain chasing whatever. My other dogs came back. She never came back. And I was only 2 or 3 weeks into owning her. I said, well, this is not good. So I did the drive around, call the police, Ringwood and everywhere else. Nothing. And I didn't call the people I got her from because I was appalled at losing the dog, weeks into having her. And, I called the shelters, everybody, no little dachshund. And she was tattooed inside her thigh. So I knew if somebody found her, we could identify her.
What kind of a tattoo? Is it like a...
Yeah, like a person gets. No,
like
it
a cross that says mom or something?
No. STF, which was Steffi. STF. Nothing clever.
Was that a common practice doing that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We used to tattoo them in the ears. You ever see the Germans do it? They have this great clamp with teeth in it, and they put ink in it, and they grab the dog's ears and go like that.
They kind of brand them almost.
Mm-hmm. But it's ink. This was done by a tattoo person who did tattoo. He just put STF for Steffi out there in Kansas.
That's interesting. I never heard of anything like that.
Oh, we used to tattoo dogs all the time until people figured out they could make STF, STP and say, that's my dog, not yours.
Oh.
You can change a tattoo.
So they do microchips now.
Yes. Well, there's another story. When they dump a dog, they usually cut the chip out.
Mm. And what's dump a dog mean?
Let it go on a farm.
Oh.
Dump it, get rid of it. Guy locally, he has sheds where people store their machinery. So he goes around at night on his ATV and he heard a dog barking in the shed. And he went and he looked and it was a little dog and he rustled some papers and this little dachshund comes charging out, jumps on his chest. And its back was damp and he figured it was under the grease and everything. He takes it home and in the light he could see the dog was blind and old. Somebody had pitched it out. So he takes it to the vet.
That's like just, yeah.
He takes it to the vet and he said, the dog is blind. I can tell that, but he's got like grease down its back from being under the tractor. And the guy said, no, that's blood where they cut the chip out before they threw the dog away.
Yeah, people are. Yeah, you see those. I see those videos sometimes of people offloading dogs.
Mm.
They don't know there's a camera there, and it's like the dog is like trying to get back in the car and like
And they drive away.
chase them down the street.
Yeah.
It's just so hard. Like you're just like an evil person.
Yeah, it's
Drop it off at a
heartbreaking.
shelter. Put it down. Like that's just I mean,
So
obviously.
I had lost Steffi going over the mountain. Now at the bottom of the mountain is the Raritan River. And there are two bridges, one up further and the bridge that we used. I looked everywhere. I called. And the shelter finally called 4 or 5 days later. We've got your dog. Because I had put posters up, reward, and all this other stuff. And this is the story I got, is that she had somehow crossed the river, whether it was on a bridge or she swam it. She went up on 202 in Oakland, which is a busy road, crossed that, went up the hill to a park. And a young single woman with a little girl had gone to the park for the day, and Steffi was there. And, they made friends, and isn't that cute and everything? And the little girl wanted to keep Steffi. Now, she could have kept it, and I never would have known what happened to her. And the mother said, no, we have to find the owner. So they put a string on her, and they figured she came from the neighborhood around the park. So they walked her through the neighborhood. And this is the truth. Steffi picked a house and went up to the door, up the stairs to the door. So the lady raps on the door. And fortunately, someone was home, an adult woman. And they said, we found your dog. She was at the park and we brought her home. She says, it's not my dog, but I work at the animal shelter.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Meant to be.
Yeah.
Okay. Meant to be. So the woman took the dog to the animal shelter and I got the call and I gave the young woman a healthy reward for getting my Steffi back.
Great story. Oh my goodness.
Yes. You can't make this stuff up.
No, half the stuff that goes on in this sport is like,
yes.
this is no way you could even imagine it to happen.
Oh, I'm just looking through my notes here. The rescues. You were talking about drainage, retention basins with pipes.
Mm-hmm.
They ran a rabbit and it ran up the pipe from the retention basin, and there wasn't any water in it at that time. It's locally. And I had a young dog named Jot, and the other two dogs came out, and Jot never came out. Now, this pipe, I know, runs to a river, maybe a quarter of a mile. Long way down there is a river. They had cleared the area, and I didn't know it, but they had put manhole grates down to that pipe. So I'm calling the dog, nothing. I hear barking way out in the field. And I walk out there and he's looking up through the grate, like, let me out of here.
Gosh.
He didn't have the sense to come back to me, but he could see daylight. So I went to the car and I got my digging bar and I pried it open and got the puppy out.
Oh my gosh.
Dummy. And then I had a 6-month-old pup here that I had bred and hunted for the guy. And I put rabbits out here and he chased it. Well, one rabbit ran up a drain we have here. And so did the dog. And I could hear the dog at the back of the Morton building barking up through the downspout.
Oh my gosh.
And apparently the rabbit was there and he was barking like crazy. Well, I moved as much rocks and stone and I took the downspout off. And there he was down in there barking. But I couldn't reach him or see him because the hole had gone down to, 3-4 inches?
Yeah.
So I had to call my husband.
I think I got that video.
Yes. Burly. And he was easily 50 feet, if not more, from where he had gone in. The first time he'd ever been in a pipe, he didn't know to back up that far, even though I called and I tapped inside. So Carl said he always wanted to put a clean out drain. So he did. And up came Burley.
Oh my goodness.
You've told me before that Carl has come to the rescue multiple times when you've got a dog stuck in a situation that you can't deal with where, with what you've got.
Yep. He's a good man.
Yeah.
He
a story you told me about a dog being under a metal building.
Oh, that was a great one.
Yeah.
Under the
Would
storage.
you share that one?
Oh, yes. That was Bane that I got from Joe Guastella. It's a construction yard. Been there for years at the dead end and a great hawking place. And you park at the dead end and hunt it. Well, this rabbit ran under one of the, it's a tractor trailer and they use them for storage. Okay. This particular rabbit ran under one that had all kinds of signs and pieces of metal leaning against it. And any leftover asphalt they had piled up against that trailer. So Bane was wearing a collar, transmitter collar. So I knew where he was. Yep. Okay. And I could hear him barking and digging. And it was really cold, icy cold. And there was an ice storm due the next day. I said, I got to get this dog out of here. So I moved as much as I could, but I couldn't break So I called Joe Guastella. I said, I bought the dog from you. Would you help me get your dog out of here? So Joe comes down and, he helps me move stuff. Still couldn't. And there was a lock, a clasp lock. And Joe said, he used to be a moving man. He said, get your digging bar out. Bloop. Now, in the meantime, while I'm waiting for Joe, I went to the office because there was a light on and there was a very drunken night watchman, an elderly drunken night watchman who really didn't want to help or know anything about this bagged lady who says her dog's under a trailer, right? So Joe gets there, breaks the lock off. Oh, Lord of mercy. And there's construction stuff in there that is very valuable. I don't know what all the stuff was. Maybe some oxyacetylene tanks and what have you. And again, with my little receiver, I could find where Bane was. Well, it's like a 3-inch oak floor in that thing. And he's under there and the rabbit is further. So I called my husband. I said, would you bring a saw down that I can cut a hole to get the dog out? He doesn't want any part of this at all. So what does he do? He gets the other camp ranger and brings him down with the saw. And we cut a hole, only like 4 by 4 inches. And there's Bane, but he's soaking wet from the condensation under an icy floor. And he's barking and perspiring, so to speak. He's soaking wet. So I grab him out, hand him to Joe, and I start reaching in for the rabbit. Carl's yelling at me, So we put the board back as best we could, and we moved all the equipment and everything. And I went and I told the night watchman, I said, we had to break a lock to get in. And I'll come back in the morning because we had spare locks. So we all went home. Okay, so I go down the next day with the lock to put it on the trailer. And I thought, well, I'll take the hawk.
Yeah.
I'll put the lock on and go hawking.
Yeah.
So I did, essentially. And I come out from hawking and there's the cop cars. I'm out from the woods,
Of course.
And they've got a big German Shepherd there. It's a, what do you call it? Canine unit.
Yeah.
I don't know why. And the regular guy. I come out and I start laughing. I said, there's the miscreant there. I'm showing, there's Bane. He's out hunting. I said, that's his fault. And they don't understand. I put the dogs and the hawk away. I explained to them what happened. And they had called the owner of the business who was vacationing in Florida. And his son was supposed to be taking calls from the maintenance yard if anything went awry. Okay. And I told him, I said, I cut a hole in the floor, and we fixed it as best we could. And I told him about the night watchman was no help. He said, why didn't you call the fire department? I said, well, what were they going to do? Lift the trailer? I mean, I never thought of, I suppose they had some kind of jack or whatever.
Yeah.
But we got it done, and I got yelled at by the owner, and his son got yelled at. I don't know what happened to the night watchman.
Yeah, he's just like drunk somewhere. Just sleeping.
He's still drunk.
Sleeping it off.
Legend is he's still he's sleeping it off to this day.
But Carl, he did rescue me, but he did send the other ranger in with the saw, so Carl's hands were clean. He didn't touch the saw. He didn't.
Not only is he useful, he's very smart.
Yes.
You gave me some advice years ago that to never let your dog go somewhere that you can't
get him back.
Yeah.
Right. Like under a cement floor.
That's hard advice to follow.
Yes.
In the heat of the moment.
Yes, I know that.
I have, ever since my big scare when I called you.
For the skunk, right.
And you talked me through it, where I had, good reason to believe that I may lose 2 dogs, maybe at least 1 to that situation. You kept me calm and talked me through it. I have resisted.
I was laughing hysterically. I got a skunk under a building.
It was a bad situation. They could have died for sure. But we all know this, but people listening may not know. Skunks' fumes are toxic.
Oh yeah,
they'll kill something in close quarters.
Not necessarily, because
Teddy.
Taffy and a Jack Russell got into a frozen mound of dirt with a skunk, and they got behind it it had a room in there, and they could not come out past it. He'd spray them. Okay. So I had a digging bar, and the ground was frozen, and I dug to them, and Taffy was unconscious, and Bane was not in good shape. I took him home, put him by the wood stove. Sorry, Carl. And they both woke up and they were fine. What kills them is if they bite the rear end of the skunk and it sprays down their throat. The oil coats their lungs, and then they take a couple of days. Normally they get sprayed by a skunk. They come out, throw up, puke around a few times, maybe have diarrhea, and then they're fine. So, like I said, your dogs were okay.
Yeah, end of the day, they were okay.
Yeah.
But that was, one, I didn't have a shovel.
Right.
Which is, I don't go anywhere without a shovel now.
Yeah.
I'll admit today, this trip, my truck was so full, I didn't really have room for much more.
We had a landscaper with us today.
I figure there's 3 other people with docks and someone will have a shovel.
Right.
But yeah, always carry a shovel if you've got a dog that goes to ground potentially.
Meals and Christy, that dog got jackknifed in a pipe under an old house.
That's what you can do.
Well, they did the right thing. They called the fire department or whoever, and they came and got it out. I've never had one in that tight.
I got one spot in particular that the rabbits always run into this 6-inch corrugated coming out of the side of this hill.
Mm-hmm.
And I always know what the rabbits are going to do. So I always try to sneak there quietly and stand there.
Yep.
And then make noise during the hunt to get the rabbits to run the other direction. But they get in there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's luckily Ginger listens. But if I had one that was hard headed,
so
the thing just probably goes forever.
Is it going underground?
It's going under a pallet, it's 6 football fields of pallets of pavers on pallets. And there's all rabbits in the pallets too, which is great. And the surrounding brush is filled with rabbits. But they jump in there and they run, but that thing goes right underneath the office building and straight underneath the pallets.
Yeah, you don't want them in there.
Drainage for all the pallets to go into, and it probably tees off everywhere because it's all what I mean?
That's bad news right there.
It'd be over.
When you go there, take a knit cap or something and stuff it in that pipe.
Yeah, I stuck. One other.
Take it out when you leave.
Yeah.
There's a rabbit that has a hole where I lost the hawk with the eagle chasing it. It goes up to a major highway, Route 1, and there's a drain pipe that goes under Route 1. And when I get there, I block it before I let the dogs go.
Is that a good idea? Because I always think of doing that, and I do that sometimes. But is that like if you know they always go to these holes, and when you can never get them out of the holes, just run around and just cover everything?
Yeah.
Well, that's like what you said earlier about sporting chance.
It's called earth stopping.
Earth stopping.
Yes.
Teddy, tell us your thoughts on that. The saying that you just said earlier. I forgot how it went. You said
in regards to a sporting chance.
You're like, sometimes it's better to just, I'm out there to kill. I don't want to give it a sporting chance. I just want it dead or something like that.
Right. I am out there to harvest a piece of wildlife to feed my hawk and dogs, a meat hunter.
Yeah.
And it's animal's bad luck if I'm after it, because I don't catch and release. I want that rabbit for a reason. And I don't hunt in areas so hard I clean out the rabbits. I have enough places. But to me, a sporting chance is for people that just want to see a dog work. Okay. But it's like a guy said, you can see a lot of good baseball pitches, but you'd sure like to see a hit once in a while.
Right.
Should we change the name of the podcast?
No, I think that's a fine.
When I have the opportunity, if we're hunting something and I have the opportunity to get it, like let's say a squirrel goes into a tree and I can reach in there and pinch the squirrel's leg with my finger and yank it out, I'm going to.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it doesn't count towards your.
Well, no, listen, that's, you have a good point. I do have a limit to it. If I reach in there and get the squirrel, I could get the squirrel and just kill the squirrel, right?
Yeah,
I want to see the hawk catch it. So I'm going to yank it out and fling it. And
But does that count as a kill though if you fling it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like if you make physical contact with it and then release it again,
that's what they always say. The human hand touches it. It's not a.
If the dogs get it, I don't care. If it gets
Right.
away from the dogs in a hole and it comes out with half its leg and it's running and the bird kills it, it counts.
Yeah.
Should have flushed earlier. I don't know what to tell you, Rabbit. But when you touch it and you had the chance to, like, you could have speared it or like held it and killed it, or you have it, then you release it again. I think it's like,
that's where I draw the line is I'm not going to kill it when we're out with the dogs and hawks. They're going to do it. But if I can reach in there and flush it out or pull it out, I will.
Yeah.
And then it's up to the dogs.
I would
and
use
hawks.
it for me. I would use a foreign object to try to get it out. Because you
just put a glove on so your skin's not touching it.
No, the glove is man-made. You got to use a organic piece of material around you.
You know how to twist a rabbit out
No, tell us about
with a
that.
stick?
I heard greenbrier works well too for that.
Yeah, if you can hold greenbrier, but it's not usually stiff enough. You take a small shrub, whatever, that has branches out, and up at the end you cut them to about that length, an inch length, and then you put it up there and you twist. And it twists into the animal's fur and you pull it down.
That counts then.
The one time I was able to do a twist, because I'm from West Virginia. My dad talked about all that stuff from being a kid. A squirrel went up a tree. I was trying to rattle it out. It wouldn't come out. Dogs couldn't get it out. I looked on the ground and there was a piece of barbed wire on the ground.
That'll do.
Just sitting there, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even have to cut it. It was just laying there.
Probably some squirrel hunter left it there.
Another hunter left
I
it there.
stuck it up and twisted it and pulled the squirrel right out.
Counts.
It works. It works. It's hard with groundhogs. They fight harder against that.
So I have one more thing that I can think of that I want to ask you, and I'm not sure about Casey, but we could record a 3-hour podcast with you every week and never scratch the surface. Is there anything that you wanted to add unprompted that we haven't asked?
What you're looking for physically in a dachshund, we sort of touched on that. That if you're going to look at a puppy, if you can see one, I like to keep my pups 10 to 12 weeks. I know who's going to have more leg. Okay, because the dog has to be athletic to do what we do, climbing brush piles. It just can't be a tracking hound. It's got to have the body to carry it over You don't want one with real short legs and a big, heavy chest. And in litters from pet breeders and what have you, you can get that. I bought a dapple bitch out of Newark, New Jersey. It was in a classified ad, dapple puppies for sale. So I bought her, and she turned in a phenomenal little tracking dog. And she had a little more leg. You're looking at temperament. Like you say, you go in there and you take a little piece of rabbit fur with you, and the puppy that snatches it out of your hand. And you take a chance. Most of the first dachshunds I had were, backyard breeders, so to speak.
This day and age, you don't have to go to the backyard breeder, though. There's so many people doing it.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness that there are people like you two that continue the line. And I've said that because I won't be here forever. You guys need to, in my opinion, they're going to continue to be useful dogs.
I think they're only going to get more useful.
I think, yeah.
The way things are going with the tighter spots, everyone needs to do something that's not going to run far. And
yeah, and I greatly respect beagles. And my dad had beagles. We shot over them. But when you put a beagle down and it starts boo-wooing, everybody in the neighborhood knows what you're doing.
Yeah.
You see a person with a dachshund, you just don't look twice. You see. I have worked around industrial parks where I park my truck and I let my dogs go and have the office worker come out. You can't dump dogs here. That's cruel. You catch them and take care of them. Okay.
Thank you.
I've had people stop me before about them, and they're like tickled pink about seeing them.
Yeah.
And I got a feeling if I went there with, a York Terrier or Patterdales or something, the attitude might be a little different. They just think it's so wonderful to see my little dachshunds running around.
Yes. People don't believe that they're hunting dogs till they see it. Take care of the dog is another thing. Physically, keep their nails cut, keep their teeth scraped.
What's the best way to keep the teeth clean?
A dime.
Yeah.
Take the dime and put it above the plaque and push down. The dogs don't like it.
Yeah.
You have to manhandle them. But it's a 10-pound dog, I don't have a demonstration dog here, but I will tell you I drop them with their back to me between my knees. So I have their hips between my knees. And then I bend them over sideways. And I can use my forearm to keep their neck down. And then I can cut their nails. All right. And they may pee down my leg if they get all upset. But the washing machine works. And then for the teeth, the same thing is I manhandle them. And they hate it. I have a scraper, a dental scraper that's like hoe-shaped. And I scrape all the tartar I can see. I don't brush the dog's teeth. I don't necessarily give them bones, but every month easily I scrape them.
Yeah.
I like the bully sticks.
If that works, that's great.
Works for me.
But does it get the molars?
I think it gets them. It's better than nothing, but I do think no matter what, you have to scrape them.
Yeah, and some dogs, like some people, get more plaque than others.
I've noticed that. You got me today on some toenails on Lily.
Yeah, when all that long hair grows, you don't notice that. They got real talons on there.
It's something that I struggle to keep up with. That doesn't surprise you.
I put it on the
falconer.
I put it on the calendar. Like I put ivermectin because I give that for heartworm. And when I give them the ivermectin, I clean their ears, brush them out, cut their nails, almost whether they need it or not. Just cut the tips off, and they don't like it. They don't like any of it, but oh well, they get over it.
Yeah, I remember Ginger last year. I looked at the end of the season, and they were like little nubs.
Oh yeah, you run them hard, and you don't need to do it.
You're
And
right.
she's digging.
If it has a proper shaped foot.
And she's like digging, and they're just like little stubby nubs. So I almost over the summer wanted them to grow back, so she'd have some digging utensils.
She has her mother's tight feet
from the
right.
upcoming season. Yeah, but yeah, I've seen it where it gets a little out of control with my other years ago.
And you have to watch the dew claw on the side because they're in the hair. They'll grow in a circle.
Yeah.
Next time you go to the vet, you ask how much a dental costs.
Is it expensive? They got to put them under for that.
Yeah.
$500 to $700.
That's a lot. Let's just get a dime.
You shouldn't be putting a an animal to sleep to do something that you
It's
can
a
do
very
while they're
light.
awake.
It's a very light
really?
anesthesia,
Okay.
right? The dog is almost there, and they use some laser thing, and it does a great job.
Yeah.
But it's still $500 to $700, if not more.
My Doberman, I had to get dental extraction done on some of his teeth. And after that, I started getting more serious about keeping dogs' teeth clean. You just kind of take it. I was told, oh, you give them dry, you give them kibble and it'll clean it out.
Some dogs probably do. Some dogs, I had a 5-year-old bitch I sold a couple of years ago. She didn't have a bit of tartar.
Interesting.
Dog care, and I have said before, and I don't mean any offense to anyone, but I have found over the years the worst person to sell a hunting dog, a dachshund, to is a young single man.
Why? Why is that?
Husbandry is not in their vocabulary.
That's a good point.
They don't see the
It's
finer
true.
points of caring for the dog. And if they have a hot date and want to go away for the weekend, they just put food and water down.
Right.
Or they make some inadequate pen to keep the thing in, and it gets run over, or
Right.
somebody steals it. Teach the dog how to get out of your swimming pool, because the kids will leave the gate open, and I've had them been drowned. They have the yard collar, the e-collar that doesn't let him out of the yard, but you have to remember to put it on the dog,
Right.
and he can get run over, running right through that stuff.
Yeah, I don't even, at my house, I don't even play with that anymore. They're in the kennel, or they're in the other kennel sleeping, or they're...
Once they learn to hunt, they're not yard dogs for the
because they
most
just
part.
go, and I got coyotes yipping every couple weeks. There's a pack that's like across the road in the woods, and it's like, you can't just put them out to pee and go sit by the TV. They get
No.
picked off. It's not going to happen.
I had a guy in, I think, Rhode Island that had 2 really, really good dogs, and he let him out one rainy night into a deer herd,
Oh, that's great.
and that was the end of that.
Got ran over, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to see here if there was any exceptional. They all have their stories. I had a bitch a little bit big, and she pushed through a groundhog den in March and dislodged a rock, and the rock fell in behind her. So she never would have gotten out because she couldn't. The groundhog was buried ahead of her, and you can't predict something like that. So she had a collar on and knew where she was.
What's the best tracing collar to purchase?
They don't make the Devon anymore. There's a English company making them. Devon was English, and they stopped making them because of the earthwork in England. And even the ferret guys can't get Devon. But there is a new company that's making. Unfortunately, our receivers can't read their transmitter.
So you got to get their receiver,
Yeah.
the whole kit.
And it's expensive, like anything else you do with the dog.
Be cool if somebody in America started making.
The terrier people tried to, and they found that getting or making the microchip that was in it was so expensive for such a small audience. But
We need Seth Roy to do it.
Yeah, we just go to Taiwan, have them do it.
Explain
Your
what you want.
optics should start doing it.
They could. Little side project
Yeah.
for a friend of the show, sponsor of the show, Seth Roy, our boy.
Yeah, the only one that has. We used to buy ferret finder collars because the terrier collars were too big.
Yeah.
Uh,
Do they make those anymore? No.
this new company does. I can text you the information.
Okay.
Yeah. Casey's going to buy one.
I need one. Yeah. And yeah, on that story of what happened with Franny 2 days ago, like, what are your thoughts on what happened to her?
Well, why don't you share the story?
Okay, so went to a spot, this usual spot, I've hawked there before, lots of rabbits, cut the dogs loose, put the bird up, North American, chasing rabbits all over the place, goes up and over, boom, I hear a smack. I run up over the hill, Ginger's trailing it up the hill, get to the top of the hill, bird's sitting 4 feet off the ground, right over the hole, just staring at the hole. By the time I got there, Ginger was already in. Ginger goes in. comes out, and I'm like, at this point, with having Franny and having her, her size and stuff, I just tell Ginger to get out. I'll let Ginger go in and like maybe work it a little bit. And then, if it's clear that she's not going to get it out, I just throw Franny in because Franny just walks in. She doesn't even have to crouch. She just walks in the hole. So I take the collar off because I'm concerned that the collar is going to get stuck. So I pop it off. She goes in and don't see her again. 10 minutes go by, 20 minutes go by, 30 minutes go by. Then I call Phil. Well, I call Paul. Well, I called Phil first and he didn't answer. I called Paul. Paul's like, 20, 30 minutes is not the end of the world. She could be eating it, whatever. And then he started giving me some advice, which I already knew, but in my panicked state of mind, I kind of wasn't thinking. Take a sapling, cut it, slide it in as far as you can, try to feel which direction it's turning, mark it with your finger, take it out, place it over the hole. Dig to there, then move from there. But the problem is this hole was on a hill. And the way it was excavated, it was like a horseshoe. Picture a horseshoe that you would use to, play horseshoes, and then tilt it on a 45-degree angle. So the hole went in and then horseshoed around to an exit. So then I just basically started digging, working the hole. Long story short, called a couple people that, thankfully they all showed up to help, brought, manpower, shovels, all different digging utensils, dug it out. But before they got there, I started digging on my own. I got pretty far. And while I'm digging, I look at the entrance and the rabbit's sitting in the entrance of the hole staring at me. And then I realize it's there and I'm like, oh, and it runs back in the hole. So then I put Ginger away and the bird away. They were already put away before I started digging. Then I ran back to the truck, got Ginger because I'm like, maybe Ginger can try to because this whole time I'm thinking, oh, she killed it in there and she's eating it. So it's obviously not dead. It's sitting right there. So I was trying to see if Ginger could stimulate it. Maybe the rabbit would do something with Franny and Franny would turn around and just stimulate something to happen. That wasn't working. I already had PEX piping in my truck that I used to slide through. That actually came in huge handy because it turns. It'll just, if you pre-turn it, you can feed. I ended up feeding 20 feet through the hole.
Wow.
All the way out through the exit. But as I was feeding it, the rabbit ended up shooting right out the bottom part of the horseshoe and running away. Then Ginger chased it and it was a whole nightmare to get Ginger back. Got Ginger back and then everybody showed up. So then we basically we marked where the hole was with the PEX and then just began excavating. And when we found her, long story short, we popped the hole down to it and I stuck my hand in to feel where she was. She bit me, of course. Then I went back in again slower and I was coaxing her, telling her it's okay because I think she was just scared. And I was actually able to put my whole hand and forearm past her in the hole and feel around. And there really wasn't anything holding her there. And I ended up just telling her, come on out. And she just jumps out of the hole all scared. And that was it. So I don't know if she got turned around, if she went down a side passage. And then if we just waited, she may have made her way back. I don't know what happened.
No idea what that was about. As I said before, perhaps there was a heavy groundhog smell in that nest where she was.
Yeah, there was a nest that we pulled it out and it was it was completely blocking the exit.
And rabbits don't nest in holes like that.
No, not our rabbits. No.
No, it was weird. It was it was almost like they found a piece of fabric in the woods and pulled fibers off of it and brought it back.
They'll use plastic bags.
Yeah.
And we call it Wamsutta sheets, when it's stuffed, anything.
Sticks, leaves, stuff like that. But to me, it just seemed like she just got scared, got turned around, and maybe the hill, there was all dry leaves in the entrance going down, and maybe she was slipping.
Yeah, it's hard to make an excuse for a dog that's not stuck, but wearing a collar, you'll get to her quicker. That's the main, and know what hole she's in.
Yeah.
I think a hawk transmitter, as I said, I've buried one in a mound and been able to locate at least where the dog is.
Yeah.
That's what happened with Aziz, that they lost him and thought he was in a hole, and apparently he wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard that story that day, that they excavated this whole area and he wasn't even in there.
It adds a whole new element to looking for your lost dog when being in a hole is a possibility.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of people don't like it. I just tell them get a bigger dachshund. You can't get all the way through. But boy, when that little dog slides in there and the rabbit slides out the other side.
Oh, yeah. And some days it's like you would never see those slips in your life without that dog. It would just be over.
And some people live where there's plenty of rabbits and more slips. But we live where every rabbit counts, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, they do. I think they do regardless. I mean, some aren't worth it. Pissed me off that rabbit got past me because my plan was to try to slide the pecs through and then catch it or something. It irritated me that it got away.
Would it count?
I don't care at that. I didn't care at that point. I was getting something out of it. And then I ended up hawking my feet off. I almost had a stroke because I ran out of water at like 11 o'clock.
Sounds familiar.
And then I just kept hawking till dark. We ended up catching a squirrel at the end, like at dark, with the new bird. And somehow it made the whole day feel worth it that we did something.
Let me ask you this. Do you feel, and Aaron, it's probably directed at you, do you feel these dachshunds are pretty good squirrel dogs?
I think they're great squirrel dogs. I sound like just trying to sell dachshunds, but I really don't know for our purposes if there's a better squirrel dog than these. There's those times where a squirrel, I mean, it happens all the time. Squirrel goes into a hole at the base of a tree and you can get a stick in there and rattle it and you can hear the squirrel growling, but it'll never come out. If a dachshund can get its face in there, that squirrel will come out.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there. And then you just see more squirrels too. This happens all the time, but one just kind of sticks in my head of we're out walking around and we don't really see anything. And I just stop and I'm watching Arwen. She's sniffing around and she goes up to a stump hole and sticks her head in it and the squirrel shoots out. I never would have saw that squirrel otherwise.
Okay.
Never would have ran into it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're, as far as dirt hawking is concerned for us on the East Coast, I think they're
good for both.
Yeah, they're good for both because you can go after rabbits and squirrels on the same day and the dog is actually useful for both.
Yeah.
And I think when you're working a squirrel in a tree and it doesn't want to move and the bird may have not seen it yet, or it's above the bird and the bird's just not laddering, or it's a young bird that you're training, and you're moving it. So another pro tip is moving around at the bottom of the tree, and maybe saplings that don't touch the tree necessarily. If you wiggle them, it could get the squirrel to kind of shift from one side to the other and get the bird to see it. I think the dog on the ground also barking. I think it gives another level.
It gives them something else to worry about.
Something else to worry about.
They're less likely to come down.
Maybe want to move their position. And I've also had squirrels where I was at my wit's end and there's nothing else moving and Ginger just starts barking. And I'm almost tempted to just be, I'm like, we're going to go somewhere else, whatever. And I walk back over. I'm like, all right, I'll pull the vines. Pull the vines, squirrel jumps. So I'm like, she independently of me, she found that squirrel, treed it, or it was already treed, and we got a slip at it. The bird didn't catch it that particular time, but
my dogs kill squirrels every year while we're out hawking.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ginger killed 2 in one day one time. I think I texted you that.
Yeah. I've had hawks knock a squirrel out of a tree, and the dog's in the right place, right time, and the dogs grab it. Yeah, grab it on the ground and nail it. One time I had a hawk lose a squirrel on the ground, and the squirrel took off running and got intercepted by 2 dachshunds and just boom. I mean, we're there to kill. We're there to hunt. And
have you ever gotten them into game birds?
So Ginger likes pheasants.
I've flushed a covey of quail and caught a wild bobwhite quail with the dachshunds. And Harrison was actually telling me today that Dickie flushed a woodcock and found and reflushed the same woodcock.
Yeah, that's possible. Wow.
And game birds put off a strong scent.
The woodcock do, right. And they're moving through now, right?
And there's no reason why. And I think you have told me before there's a falconer that hunts woodcock with dachshunds, right? Mm-hmm. Or is he a gun hunter? Can't remember.
No, he's a falcon.
Yeah, I caught the only woodcock I ever caught was with my Tiercel goshawk, and Ginger flushed it. And the thing must have been moving because Ginger started whining. And then the bird heard the whining and moved right up. I have it all on GoPro. And
they run.
It must have been running. And then the bird moved right over my head. I'm right under the bird. Ginger like makes in on it. It makes a break for it through like the cover, and it was just like a chip. It was a chip shot.
Mhm.
As it's making its way through the cover, the tiercel is just pumping with all his might down, and then just goes like right as it cleared the cover,
Nice.
and it just smoked it.
I
Never would have got that without the dog there.
I sold a dog out to the West Coast, and they have what they call Thule reeds, like Phragmites, and they had used a spaniel, and they got the dachshund, and the dachshund could get tighter to flush pheasants out of there, get under all that stuff better.
I don't know how it's going to work out because I don't think things are underway quite yet for them. But a guy named Mike bought a dachshund from me. He lives in Wyoming. He lives near Sheridan, where Western Sporting is, where David Frank owns Western Sporting. And then Steve Jones with American
Editor.
Falconry magazine. He lives there as well. Steve was actually Mike's sponsor. And I hope these guys don't mind me sharing this, but it's not a big deal. But they tried to talk Mike out of getting a dachshund, but I think he's a fan of New Jersey Falconry.
Who is
Mike?
Mike.
So Mike, and I think you actually sent him my way a long time ago. But Mike he wanted a dachshund. And after Steve saw the dachshund working, he's a pup working, rabbits in a controlled situation. He said, you know what? I think that this guy could flush pheasants that the bird dogs can't.
I think they could. And then the fact that the pheasants, which is such a pain in the neck for the pheasant guys, is they like to run. I think when they start running and the dog is like at the same, they're not a setter, they're at the same height as and they're chasing it like almost like a fox. Like I think the thing's going to be more likely to get back in the air for the bird to hit.
They'll hit heavy brush and heavy cover and run in like a rabbit.
Yeah.
So what perfect dog?
And I don't know much about, setters and pointers, but they're not known for crashing through brush to get something out. So
oof, you probably just made a lot of people.
I don't know. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I don't know. I'm not sure that that's what they're known for. That's all I'm saying.
I sold one to a falconer, and he was also a gun hunter, and he shot a grouse over his dachshund. And after that, the dachshund would track and flush grouse.
Oh, that could be useful.
They're versatile dogs.
Yeah, I think they could do a lot. I've seen pictures. I'm sure, Teddy, you've seen pictures of them retrieving ducks in water and stuff like that.
And quail or mourning doves.
Yeah, I've seen stuff like that.
Doves.
I was trying to catch some hooded mergansers on a drainage pond
Ooh, that's hard.
a few years ago. It didn't happen.
That's
but
hard.
It didn't stop me from trying. The dachshunds were going crazy on the shore. And they kept those mergansers moving, they kept diving. They were going back and forth through the pond, and it was because of the dachshunds on the edge. So they helped. I mean,
Have you ever heard of the old how you toll waterfowl? Tolling waterfowl. If a fox runs along the bank of a river or a lake, all the waterfowl will come to look at it.
Really?
Oh, I have heard
It's called tolling, right? I'm sure at a time that they told them, they had little red dogs and they told them in and shot them in different times. Well, my first little long hair, Steffi, she would do that. She was nuts, so she'd run back and forth barking at the geese on the lake, and every one of those geese would swim over to see what she was doing. I said, "My goodness, she's a tolling dog."
That's interesting. I never knew that technique. That's interesting.
Yeah, old method. It's like
shoot them on the water.
Yeah, people who they were subsistence hunting,
or just wanted it in the bag.
They needed food, so they weren't worried about shooting it on the wing.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole discussion of this idea of flying from the fist versus the trees, because the trees is too easy versus waiting for the animal to flush before catching it. Like,
yeah, I think there's the term shooting a sitting duck is a real thing.
Yeah, or shooting a grouse in a tree or a pheasant on the ground.
My lurchers would point grouse at night. That kahuna dog, he'd stand there and he'd be looking, and there'd be a grouse
up in a tree roosting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a bucket list quarry for me. Rough grouse.
Yeah, good luck. Maybe
they're hard.
They're fast.
I feel like they're hard when you want them, but then when you're just looking for goshawk nests, they just blow up
Everywhere.
right in front of your feet everywhere.
Yep.
So, Teddy, I wanted to ask you. This is the last question that I have for you. And I'm not really even sure quite how to frame it, but you've been hawking for what?
Since 66.
66.
Do the math.
You're going to do it as long as you can.
Absolutely.
And what is it about falconry that has grabbed you so much?
You know, interestingly, I was thinking about that today watching the dogs. It's the hunt. You know, I can have the dogs at home and quarry at this end, but the excitement when those dogs hit a track and the bird is ready, it's the hunt that's so addictive. Killing a rabbit, a lot of ways to kill game, all right, and but to see those dogs get rev up and get that quarry up, it's an adrenaline rush, I guess. I think we're all adrenaline junkies. We want that chase. And I plan to be doing it as long as I'm able, because the thrill is always there. And of course, it thrills me that other falconers see the worth of these dogs. I've been promoting them for years, but it's hard for a grown man to buy a little toy foo-foo dog.
Well, nowadays, that's all.
Well, you're right.
It's all out the window nowadays.
Yes, you're right. But I am extremely grateful to the other people that are breeding them and using them and seeing what I've been saying. You know, that guy the other day, he said, I would never go out without a dachshund again.
Could you imagine today without dachshunds? What we were doing today? No way.
In that Greenbrier?
No way.
No, man.
No way, no how.
You know, unless I'm Harrison with 6-foot legs.
Yeah.
I can't get through that stuff. I learned that long ago.
Just rip you apart.
Well, you don't see the hunt.
You don't see the hunt. You don't know even where to step. The rabbit knows you're at a disadvantage, so it may not even bust in a nice
they just
area.
Stay right there.
It'll just run a little bit and stop. I see it all the time when I get fed up and I'm like tired of waiting for the dogs, and I get in there and start going. Like, you see the rabbit's not even scared of you. You see it through like the thick stuff, and it just goes and then stops. If you don't see that, it's not even. And then you could go to it, and then it will behind you. Like, when the dogs are in there, even any dog, it's just they're like, I'm out of here.
Yep. Yes.
You know, and then the other thing I was thinking about today, which was kind of fascinating, and everyone, like, you know, the mainstream hunter people, I think a lot of these people are coming around to falconry. It's becoming more popular where, like, some of these bigger outdoor media companies, they can't really deny it anymore. We had Jones Falconry appear on the Mossy Oak podcast, which is a huge, giant company. So people are finding out about it. And I don't know about you, but if I had a shotgun with us today, how many of those rabbits could we have shot?
Several.
You think? All the ones that I saw, I didn't even really see.
If you were quick and you could catch it coming across those openings.
You have to be standing there waiting for that exact moment.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking today, I'm like, because I'm a good shot with a shotgun, but the way I was working the cover, and the way the dogs are working the cover, and those rabbits would cut across that road for a split second and be on the other side. And even where my bird caught that rabbit today,
you wouldn't have seen it.
You wouldn't even have seen it to shoot at it.
True.
Like the bird got it. Like, there was no other way to get it. It was behind a wall of what, I don't know what the name of those birds, the big red ones that come up, and they're like thick. What we were in the last hunt.
Right.
I don't know, but those things are like mini tree trunks with spines coming out of them, and it was a wall of that.
Oh, that's Aurelia.
Aurelia, that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Up over my head.
Right.
Which is not hard to do. And then the Ginger pushes it, and it just makes a break for it through like these little saplings, and the bird just like
it makes it happen. They make it happen.
I mean, some situations, yeah, you could just shoot it, but maybe you could shoot it, Teddy. Sounds like Teddy was a little more confident with her abilities than me.
I shoot squirrels, but I gave up shooting rabbits a long time ago. Just to watch two predators.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, I put the dogs down and I stand there, you know, with my experienced bird that I had, and they just do it. and they don't need any direction from me.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it messes them up when I say here, that I thought the rabbit ran there. It didn't. It ran that way.
Yeah, I have a bad habit of over controlling the situation.
Right. And that's why Ginger is getting independent and ornery, because she knows more than you do. But she needs
annoying.
time to work it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I feel for Dickie sometimes too, because
Yeah.
he's a very good dog. That's a very good dog, Dickie. He just
There's not much to look at, unfortunately.
He's a handsome dog. What are you talking about?
He's a very handsome dog.
He's a mutant.
The dog that puts up the game is the best looking dog.
That's right.
You had him, you were ready to call him, and then Harrison said, hey, I think I want that dog.
I was content to keep him. I was content to keep him.
No, he gets it done, other than today ruining. My bird caught, just so the audience knows, so my bird caught a rabbit.
Oh, boy.
The first rabbit we caught with my bird. And Dickie runs right up to my bird and stuck his nose in there. And that particular bird does not
tolerate that.
She jumped off and tap dancing on his forehead, and the rabbit's running away. Ended up catching another one about 30 minutes later.
Well, she shouldn't have let go of the rabbit.
She should not have let go of the rabbit.
And he shouldn't have went in there like that.
But I think he shouldn't have went in there first.
You know what? He's used to that big Siberian that doesn't care.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's true.
So.
But it's Dickie's fault.
I
caught two rabbits
it's
there.
Harrison's fault.
It's Harrison's fault. So it was Harrison's.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share some of my stories.
Yeah, Teddy, thank you so much for coming on.
This was much requested, and this was like always at the tip top of things we wanted to do, but we wanted to do it in person.
Yeah, we didn't want to get you on a computer screen.
No.
Especially when you're not that far. We could make it happen somehow.
Right.
Could you imagine a better day? Go out hunting.
I'm just happy I caught something, Teddy.
I know you catch things. I know you guys.
I know, but I want you to see it so you could tell everybody that I do, and I'm not lying.
Well,
there's a conspiracy that I
wearing
release
his heart on his sleeve right now.
That I release baggies into the field. There's a conspiracy of that. Yeah.
No, that's not a conspiracy.
That's a fact.
That's a fact.
I know. Aaron's making it worse.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Teddy.
Thank you, Teddy.
All right. It's been an honor. And good luck to everyone out there hawking.
Yep.
They'll need it.
Get a dachshund.
Yeah, make your life easier.
Yeah.